Hey, what's up, everybody? We're gonna jump into this in just a minute. So just give me a couple of seconds, and we're gonna jump into this. I'll put everybody up. I can hear you, Gibbs. What's up?
Hey, folks, can you hear me?
Yes,
All
sir.
right, everybody. So we
All
are
right, just give
about
me
to
1 second to
start
set up,
this.
all right?
The subject
Yeah, no
tonight
problem.
is
We're waiting.
I
immunity,
can't hear you guys like even a little bit. Hold on, let me try to figure that out.
and we're gonna kick this off here in a minute. Welcome to everybody in the show. It would be awesome if I had somebody up on stage to help grift while I was doing this, but unfortunately, it's just little old me. So we're going to get into this really soon. Obviously, everybody's setting their equipment up, making sure everything works, and we'll have a good time. It's going to be awesome.
No. Everybody having audio issues, huh?
All right, I can hear you guys now.
Okay, good.
Score 1 for the Luddite. I fixed something. You don't understand what a miracle that is.
I'm proud of you.
Oh, we're familiar. We're all familiar.
All right, Charlie's gonna disconnect, rejoin. Let me just see where iCal's at. He should be here in a second, and then we'll get started here. All right, does Charlie fix everything?
I don't know.
All right, and iCal says he's walking in right now.
What up, Pisco? How you doing, buddy? Oh, he's talking to his stream. All right.
My bad. I was talking to you. I muted myself. My apologies. How are you, man?
Good. Long time.
Long time, no time. Wait, when's the last time we talked? Was it about Trump hypotheticals?
Oh, yeah. You were putting me through, I think, like hour 8 of our struggle session.
Yeah.
So.
We're done with the struggle session, but I'm sure there'll be more hypotheticals in our future.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
All right, Charlie's just switching inputs.
Oh my God. Can you guys hear me now?
Hey,
Yes, we can hear you.
I freaking pushed to talk on. Hello. Sorry, I'm doing this from a
Whoops.
friend's house, so I'm on my laptop, which I haven't turned on in probably 4 months.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate you doing it for us. And
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Let me get my camera on.
iCal will be here in 3 minutes, he said, and then we can kick this off. Also, do y'all know the rules? All right, the rules, basically are simple. If you've never been here before, y'all got 7 minute openings. I'll give you like a 30-second heads up, and then if you're close to it, whoever goes first goes last on the closings. We have 3 minute closings. Yeah, after the first open in 7 minutes, you'll have about like 8 minutes or so to talk, like amongst each other, and then I'll have to just pause y'all to have the judges come in and ask a couple questions each, and then we'll do that for about 10-15 minutes. Then we'll go back to another open period where y'all argue amongst each other, and we'll come back to the judges for another 10-15 minutes, and then we'll have like one short, brief open, and then we'll go to closings. and then we'll be good to go from there. Any
I'm not
questions?
remembering all that. I don't, but I'll just
Don't
follow
worry,
along here.
I'll walk you through it. Yeah, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
Hold on, we got judges period real quick, and
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, and I mean the important thing is 7-minute open, 3 minutes closed. That's all you really need to know. But 1 second, Ika will be here, and we'll get kicked off. And then at the end, judges, y'all just DM me who won, and then we'll come to y'all at the end and say who won and why. Oh, just give me 1 second.
Oh, cool! You have your little ats there, Ryan. I should follow you on YouTube.
I mean, to the extent there's anything on that channel, please do.
Yeah, I will. You guys should follow Ryan C. Mullally on YouTube.
Yeah, Wick was making fun of me because he made the very good point. Like, why are you going on all these panels and not even recording it? Like, let alone streaming. You're not even recording it, right? Like, do something.
Yeah, might as
Yeah,
well.
you're just missing money.
Yeah, so I'm in baby stages of learning how to do this shit. Putting up the branding on the bottom of the virtual camera is like my greatest technical accomplishment.
Pretty good.
You're ahead of me then. I still don't have the branding on the virtual cam.
Non-Font did it, so I feel like I had to catch up.
There you go. Non-Font's good for that kind of thing. Where is Ika? 2 minutes, he said. 2 minutes ago. All right, well, while we wait, we'll just go ahead and we'll just do some intros. Tell everybody who wants to get kicked off. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Debate Championship Series. Today we have a good one. We're going to be talking about what is it, constitutional immunity or immunity. I believe that's what we're talking about. I think it's Trump versus the United States in the specific case, whether or not it was ruled correctly. I'll let everybody give an intro to tell us who they are. We have some wonderful judges and then our wonderful contestants as well. We'll start with Mr. McLeod here. Go ahead. Hi,
I'm Ryan Mullally. I'm an attorney, and I'm here today to argue that Trump, the United States, was rightly decided, that in fact, the Constitution does provide for presidential immunity, and the Supreme Court was right to recognize that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll go to our other candidate next, Mr. Pisco.
Thank you, guys. Pisco, New York attorney. I'm here to argue that Trump versus the United States is a disastrous decision and that there is no basis in the Constitution for the invented immunity that the case created.
Fantastic. And we'll go to our first judge, Enemy Charlie.
Hi, I am Enemy Charlie. I know next to nothing about law. So Rich and I joked that we were like a real jury because we know nothing about law. So this will be fun. It'll just be, I guess, like most cases, kind of vibes based. We'll see how it goes.
Fantastic. Grid.
Yeah, I'm a Grid One Motorsports. I don't really have an opinion on this, so this will be really interesting to hear the various arguments put forth.
Fantastic. And last but not least, our debate coach out of Texas, Ika.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm used to judging high school kids at debate tournaments and stuff. So it'll be interesting to judge people who both have higher credentials than I have. But I guess that is what life is about, right? We live in a democracy, so we have to convince not only the experts, but we have to convince nincompoops like the three of us.
All right, fantastic. All right, well, let's kick it off then. It looks like, I believe, Mr. McLeod, you're taking the affirmative, so I guess that means you start. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the 7 minutes, and then just go ahead and take off.
Thanks, Gibbs. And yeah, just give me a shout. Just give me a shout if it looks like I'm running out of time.
Sure, I'll give you like a 1 minute and then like a half second kind of thing.
Perfect.
Or 30 second, I mean.
Yeah. So for 234 years of American history, no president was prosecuted for their official acts. And that was a good thing. If a president were subject to prosecution by his political opponents, the moment he left office, it would chill his ability to take the bold and unhesitating action required of an independent and vigorous president. And worse, it would destroy the separation of powers and principles of limited government built into our Constitution to safeguard our liberty. Luckily, our Constitution does require that presidents have at least some degree of immunity. And the Supreme Court correctly recognized that constitutional mandate in Trump v. United States, which is the decision I'm here to talk about. So I'm here to tell you that they were right, The court was right to grant presidential immunity, despite all the crazy Destiny and maybe Pisco, we'll see, people claiming that immunity was some kind of invention of a partisan court with no basis in the Constitution. The court was right. The Constitution confers at least some level of immunity to the president, and this is the rare argument in law that's a knockdown argument, meaning there isn't really a good counterargument. It's completely clear that the Constitution must give the president some level of immunity, and I'm going to explain that to you now. Going back to the beginning, the court was asked to decide whether the government could charge President Trump with various criminal counts. And that raised two questions. Does the president have any immunity at all? And if he does have some immunity, how does that immunity apply to the alleged facts? So I said that the first point, that he must have some immunity, is basically a slam dunk, and here's why. If you go back to your civics classes, the very basics, we have a government of limited and separated powers. Courts can't just decide whatever they want. They can only decide a case in controversy that comes before them. The president can't do whatever he wants. He can only do specific things as articulated by the Constitution. And Congress can't pass whatever law it wants. It only has powers in specific areas. And there are some areas that belong to the president and the president alone. Those are his core and exclusive powers. And his core and exclusive powers cannot be regulated by Congress. They cannot be regulated by Congress at all, because if Congress did, they would be intruding on a power that was given to only the president. So here's an example of what I'm talking about to make it more concrete. The Constitution gives the president the power to pardon. We've always known that was the president's power and the president's power alone. In the Civil War era, for example, Lincoln was going to issue pardons to anyone who defected from the South. Congress didn't like that, and they passed a law that was going to limit the scope of those pardons. And in 1870, the court ruled you can't do that. Congress cannot limit the scope of the presidential power to pardon because Congress has no power in this area. But let's say Congress got sneaky. Let's say Congress didn't pass a law that said you can't pardon. What if Congress said, we'll make a law that it's a crime, it's a federal crime to do any government work on the Sabbath? They didn't mention the president, they didn't mention the pardon. Can they regulate the pardon that way? No. Because if they did, then they could still regulate the pardon. Let's say the president comes in on Sunday and he gives somebody a pardon. And then somebody charges him with that crime. They say, you broke the law, you gave a pardon on the Sabbath, and that's government business. Well, now Congress can regulate the pardon just by not mentioning it. That's not how constitutional law works. If Congress doesn't have the power, they don't have the power. So if Congress passes any law, even if it's very vague and general, even if it's a criminal law, and it tries to limit the president's ability to pardon, that law is unconstitutional as applied to the president. And that's what immunity is. Constitutional immunity is an as-applied challenge. You charge the president with a crime, he shows up in court and says, Your Honor, you can't charge me with that crime because as it is applied to me, it is unconstitutional to use the law that way. So, if you've been following along, there are certain powers that are the president's and only the president's. We know that they exist. They're well established in law. The power to pardon, the power to direct his subordinates to investigate and to prosecute crimes, the power to remove executive senior officers, the power to recognize foreign governments. These are powers only given to the president. Congress can't regulate them, so Congress can't criminalize them. Therefore, the president is immune to any law that would do so. Having established that the president is entitled, in fact, to immunity, then the court was faced with a separate question, which was, how do we figure out how to apply immunity to the facts of this case? And keep in mind, the Supreme Court is not a trial court. They only get given the appellate record. Whatever happened at the district court went up to the circuit court and then comes up to the Supreme Court. They're giving a limited record. So they looked at the limited record. They looked at the scant law that talks about how to handle using legal action against a former president. And there's not much of it. Like I said, we don't generally do this to former presidents. There's a few cases that they looked at, and they determined that of the options available, they could give absolute immunity to everything, or they could rein it in and give a more limited immunity. And that's what they did. They gave a more limited immunity to things outside those core and exclusive powers. That way it could be rebutted. And then they just sent it back down to the trial court and said, look, we just told you what the law is. We told you about immunity. We told you about the rebuttable presumption. We told you about some other things that we're going to get into, but are a little too technical for the opening. But the trial court didn't consider any of that. So they asked the trial court to figure it out. And that's all the Supreme Court did. And any crazy hypotheticals or doomsaying to the contrary is just misconstruing the fact of what the Supreme Court actually ruled. We should have a lot of fun tonight. Pisco, I think I'm going to turn over to you, buddy.
Fantastic. You got 13 seconds to spare. All right, we'll just reset this, and whenever you're ready, Pisco, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So I take the question of whether a case was rightly decided, that what we're asking is, did the court come to the, quote, correct conclusion? Now, I'm told by originalists, and I know that Ryan is part of this originalist tribe, and to be fair, the Supreme Court has seemingly sort of accepted originalism as its main doctrine or interpretive mode of analysis. And so the question of whether something is correct is, under an originalist framework, does it provide the answer that originalists, that people who apply that originalist framework faithfully would come to, reasonable originalists would come to? And I'll note, in the entire opening of what Ryan just gave you, did he cite a single historical text or thinker or framer who thought that the words of the Constitution, I assume he's an original public meaning originalist, that the words of the Constitution meant that the president has this kind of criminal immunity? Did he cite any Federalist paper? Did he cite James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, anything? The answer is, of course he didn't. And he didn't because the historical record that we're supposed to look to as our first source, our best source for interpreting the Constitution, is totally contrary to what Ryan and what Trump was arguing for and what the Supreme Court ultimately granted. But Ryan is not alone. The majority also is bereft of the opinion, is bereft of any historical sources that suggest that the framers understood the vesting clause of Article 2, the separation of powers, to necessarily imply a type of criminal immunity. You would think that after having a revolution to overthrow a king, where the law emanated from the king, where the notion of immunity, it was the notion that God appointed the king, the divine rule of kings, that in that conversation, in the Constitutional Convention, there would be some mention of this wide sweeping, well understood version of executive power that contained with it some form of criminal immunity. But the record does not have that. If anything, right? It suggests the contrary. The framers knew how to write immunity clauses. They considered one and wrote one, a limited form of immunity clause for congressional legislators in their speeches and on their way to debates and on their ways to do stuff. There were then existing state constitutions that had state level criminal immunity for its governors and its respective state officials. They didn't write it in. They just did not. And they're smart lawyers, these guys, right? Contained within the Constitution as well is the impeachment judgment clause. What does the impeachment judgment clause say? That for basically for convictions of impeachment, which include high crimes and misdemeanors like bribery, treason, other high crimes and misdemeanors, that you would nevertheless be liable for indictment in the normal course. It was totally expected that a president at the time of the framing would be liable to such crimes, and that you wouldn't have this invented rationale from the Supreme Court that you can look, for example, Ryan brought up a bribery case. You can look at the fact that money was shifted hands. You could look at the fact that there's a bribery, but you can't look at why money was shifting hands. The essence of what bribery is, which is the right? The quid pro quo. That's what we're looking at for a crime like bribery. And obviously the Constitution explicitly anticipates those kinds of criminal prosecutions. But if you're unable to look into the evidence of whether of someone's official acts and thereby have Congress question and potentially undermine the motives behind why a president takes a particular action, then where is the room for that? Where is the room also for impeachments, right? Ryan says that Congress can't intrude on the executive branch by legislating in a way that affects the president's core and exclusive powers. Is that only for legislation? Why is it permissible for Congress to inquire as to the motives of a pardon in the context of an impeachment proceedings? Surely you would have to be committed to the position that even impeachments must stray away from going into the motives or intent behind a pardon in the context of an impeachment proceeding. So Congress should not, as a matter of, even if courts are unable to weigh on that, should not, as a matter of deference, I suppose, to what the Constitution requires, should not get evidence as to why a president who's taking bribes is giving certain pardons away. That would sort of be on the scope. But that, of course, runs into the common practice that has been established by both the court and by presidents in the past, which is even state prosecutors are able to get records. Of course, Congress can get records if it wants in terms of its impeachment matters. The truth is, there is no good historical evidence that this was what was intended. It's also, there's no evidence that it's needed. Like, look at Israel right now. Israel right now is conducting a criminal prosecution of Benjamin Netanyahu in the context of a war. And in the context of, these are just, bribery allegations, abuse of power, that kind of stuff. Are they unable to operate an executive power, an executive office? I know it's different in terms of the ministerial system, the fact that it's a parliament, but there's nothing incompatible about running a country and even having a prosecution while the commander-in-chief is the sitting president. But we don't even have that here. This is about former presidents. And it's a good thing, by the way, that the historical record is absent of any facts or circumstances that an originalist would look to imply some kind of criminal immunity. And it's a good thing that it's not necessarily entailed or even, in a weaker form necessary to the executive power as understood in the United States, because it would also not be it would not be a good policy, right? I'm afraid that the president, under the current circumstance, which is counter to what most presidents assumed throughout the course of this nation's history, that they would be subject to prosecution even for official acts, potentially. I'm afraid that will lead to an unhinged executive, which is what you're seeing right now. We're seeing an executive branch that is totally unhinged in terms of their willingness to accept bribes for Qatari airplanes, to have crypto scams, to basically run roughshod over the entire executive branch, which is exactly what they're doing now. Thankfully, there is a response to the parade of horribles that Ryan is trying to cast right now, which is, if there is some congressional legislation that is incompatible with express power of the president, you can just have an as-applied challenge. But that's not what immunity means, right? Justice Barrett, she says that the term immunity, she puts it in quotes in her concurrent opinion, which I think Ryan might agree with, as a shorthand for two propositions: that the president, quote, can challenge the constitutionality of a criminal statute as applied to official acts, and that he can obtain interlocutory review. But that's just not what immunity means. If that's what Ryan means by immunity, then I guess he agrees with Barrett, but that isn't what the majority means, certainly, and it's not what most people understand immunity to mean. Thanks.
Perfect. Right at 7. I think that's the new record now. You got a record now. I'm excited. All right. We'll open it up. We're going to do about 8 minutes, and then we'll go to the judges. Fight.
Pisco, I was listening to you, and it sounds like, I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're actually contesting the premise that the president has immunity as to his core and exclusive powers. Is that right?
Correct. Because I understand immunity different than you. I think that we should clarify what we mean by immunity. What do you mean by immunity?
I mean, constitutional immunity, and I do agree with Justice Barrett, is exactly what she said it was, which is, if the president is charged with a crime, the president can go to court and say, you can't prosecute me for that because that law, it might be constitutional in general, but as applied to me, that law is unconstitutional, and I'm entitled to interlocutory review. I can go up to the Supreme Court to get a decision on it. That's exactly what immunity is.
Sorry, but I don't, in abstract terms, what is immunity? Is immunity, so I'm quoting from Barrett now, that the power to challenge the constitutionality of a criminal statute as applied to official acts alleged in an indictment, and to obtain interlocutory review of the trial court's ruling. That's your understanding for what immunity is?
That's what you think. That is what the constitutional immunity is in this case. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
No, but that's not how I understand immunity. Like, there could be a lot. So, for example, if Congress,
why does your understanding of immunity matter at all?
Well, no, I think that Black's Law Dictionary definition of immunity, that you think that matters, right? It's not just I'm not offering a proprietary definition. I think we're lawyers, right? So we're citing something. I'm about to cite you Black's Law's definition of immunity. I think that's relevant, don't you?
Well, I mean, I think the reason that this is the correct way to look at it is the question that's raised by the core powers and core and exclusive powers argument is that it's a separation of powers question. Congress doesn't have the power to regulate in these areas. Do you think Congress does have the power to regulate in these areas?
So it depends. In some cases, I'm going to say no. In some cases, I'm going to say yes. But
okay, let's assume it's a core power. Let's assume it's the pardon power. Can they regulate the pardon power?
So I do actually want to get to these hypotheticals. I'm not straying away from them, but we need to have like clarity on what we mean by these terms, right? Like we need to know what you mean by immunity.
I've told you exactly what I mean. That if you bring the case against the president, he can say it is unconstitutional for you to bring that case against me because the Constitution says you can't do it. That's immunity. What's the difference?
Yes. So because that is not the legal understanding, the typical legal understanding of what immunity is. I want to finish on that, right? Because it really matters. So if all you mean by immunity is the availability of interlocutory review and the ability to challenge the constitutionality of an indictment, I mean, that is a bizarre interpretation of what immunity means. And it's not what Black's Law Dictionary says, which is an exemption from the duties and liabilities imposed by law, meaning basically boiling down to the notion, this is in Justice Jackson's dissent, that the king can do no wrong. In other words, it's a zone where there can be no illegality. It's not the same as raising a defense. And in many different contexts, there can be separation of challenges questions where a law is unconstitutional, but that's not immunity.
It's exactly the same thing, and you're trying to make a hair's breadth difference where there is none. If the ex-president goes to court and says, you can't charge me with this crime because the Constitution doesn't let you do it, it's unconstitutional. You can call that a zone. You can call that immunity. You can call that an as-applied challenge. It's the exact same thing. He's saying the law doesn't apply to me in the way you want it to because Congress doesn't have the power to do it.
And it can result in the same situation, which is that
how are they different?
Yeah.
How is it different?
I'll explain. I'm not scared.
Yeah.
So they can result in the same outcome, which is that someone who's charged with the crime can have that case dismissed, but
just so you guys know, here is, I've muted down
a criminal indictment.
I'm a judge in this debate.
Will be able to inquire
that's
as to
what's
whether
going
the president's
on.
actions were in fact unlawful or not. Right? Like, that's the key distinction. That's why it matters to Trump, right? That's why presumably, you can see why Trump is arguing for this, right? So if it were the case that the immunity doctrine, all it meant was a separation of powers challenge, then we would have actually the court in the ability in the driver's seat to determine whether what the president is doing is lawful or unlawful, right? So because if the president is doing something unlawful, what would the separation of powers concern with? The core distinction here, and what I think this semantical dispute is covering up, the core distinction here, if it were a normal separation of powers thing, the court could actually inquire into the lawfulness of it. But they can't under the current version of immunity. And,
Pisco, you are equivocating concepts in a way that I hope the judges are picking up on. You said if the conduct is unlawful, how could the conduct be unlawful if the law doesn't apply because Congress has no power in that area? And I also, just because I want to make sure that the judges are clear on this,
no equivocation.
You are taking a position that even the government, when arguing against Trump's immunity, would not take. The government conceded this point because it's so clear that there are core powers that can't be regulated. And just to make this as clear as I can,
government did not concede
on page 134 of the transcript, the lawyer for the government, Mr. Durbin, said, with respect to the core powers, we think those are just things that can't be regulated at all, like the pardon power and the veto.
So,
and wait,
agree.
So let me finish.
Yeah.
On that page 85, Justice Gorsuch asked him, "Did you agree that there are some core functions of the executive that a president, that Congress cannot criminalize?" And he said, "Yes." Period.
So we are there's no disagreement that there were some acts that Congress could purport to criminalize something that the law would breach separation of powers concerns. There's absolutely zero equivocation. What we're talking about here is the concept of immunity. You said that it was equivocation for me to that I was conflating terms. Perhaps I actually don't know what the accused equivocation is, but I think I'm detecting some confusion that it somehow would be circular to have a separation of powers consideration where the court is charged with actually interpreting what is legal and what is not legal. the distinction here between calling something immunity and saying it's normal separation of powers analysis is in the immunity context. There are things that the president could skate by on, in other words, not face a legal penalty for, that could be illegal, right? That could, and that's the whole point of having the immunity, right? If the immunity is not just for things that are legal, it's also for things that are illegal. So in a normal separation of powers context, you could absolutely have some kind of determination as to whether or not the act in question or the law in question, or whether the conduct as alleged by the government is legal or illegal, if true, right? And thereby see whether it's covered by whatever sphere of incompatibility from a separation of powers.
It couldn't be. The circularity is it can't be illegal because Congress can't regulate the action. And in response to this argument, I'm going to say the exact same thing Justice Gorsuch did, which is, quote, I mean, we can call it immunity, or you can call it they just can't do that. What's the difference? It's the same thing. You're saying you are not allowed to prosecute this person in this area. And you agree you can't prosecute him in the area. And the fine line you're attempting to draw here between immunity and just the government is not allowed to do this is non-existent. The government isn't allowed to do it. Even the lawyers for the government agreed to this. Like, this is beyond dispute.
So if Congress passed a law that said something like this: it is criminal for any Department of Justice official to accept an order by the president and to carry out an order by the president to prosecute or investigate an individual in order to fraudulently undo the results of an election. Would you think that law is that law would be barred? So it's not criminalizing the president's conduct; it's saying just of a Department of Justice official. Would that law be constitutional? You presumably would say no, right?
It would be unconstitutional, but not because of this case. It would be unconstitutional because of Marbury v. Madison.
Does that mean that all department officials have immunity? Is that criminal immunity? Would you call that criminal immunity?
But that's a facial challenge. That's a facial challenge, not an as-applied challenge.
Would you call that criminal immunity?
So the thing that
I'm asking, would you call it criminal immunity? That's all.
Pisco. No, because that law is facially unconstitutional. On its face, it is unconstitutional.
Wait, what we're saying, the nature of whether it's a facial or as applied challenge changes whether we should construe the kind of protection granted by the constitutional powers as immunity or not immunity, depends on how particular litigation proceeds.
So for the non-lawyers in the audience, a facial challenge means the law on its face is unconstitutional. Congress just can't do that to anybody. There's no world in which Congress is allowed to do what it purports to do.
But it's not immunity.
Yes, because immunity, as we teed up from Justice Barrett's concurrence, is not a facial challenge. It's an as-applied challenge.
Now imagine. So you know what I'm going to do next. What I'm going to do next.
Let me finish the thought, Pisco. So when I'm saying that there's no difference between an as-applied challenge with a right of interlocutory appeal, and then you bring up a case of a facial challenge would be appropriate, those are very different things. Also, the law you brought up is unconstitutional for a completely different reason. So the example doesn't really strike me as a particularly good one.
No, but hang on, like I said. So whether it's on all fours with the particular prosecution issue here, but now imagine the same laws at issue here targeting the Justice Department officials as such. Would you say that that would be unconstitutional, and would it be immunity? So we're not talking about the facial challenge. It's as applied. It's, conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States, but it alleges essentially the same thing as to lower officials and in the executive branch for the same conduct.
Can you go through that again? I'm not sure I understand.
I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna let you go, Pisco. Then I'll give you like a 30-second response. Then we go to judges.
Okay, so here the only distinction that I'm doing in this hypothetical, again, this is about the semantics for those of you that zoom out, is the semantics about what we mean by the term immunity. The only distinction, you said you wouldn't call it immunity in the law I gave because it would be a facial challenge and therefore it wouldn't be really immunity for the lower official. But now imagine, instead of this law that's very narrowly targeting these Justice Department officials, it's the same laws at issue here applying for the same conduct to those lower branch officials. Would you say that is immunity?
Go ahead and respond, and then we're going to go to judges. Go ahead.
Of a sort, but not related to this case at all. I mean, the reason that that's unconstitutional is that in Marbury v. Madison, the seminal case in all of the federal legal system, the court decided that you cannot restrict the executive by restricting his subordinates. So, I mean, it has the fact pattern you're laying out is, yes, unconstitutional, but no, has nothing to do with the Trump immunity case. It's decided by like the most seminal case in our history.
No, but it's the same thing, right? Like the immunity immunity at issue there. The quote, it's like just basically saying that it's incompatible. So, but you would never say, would you? Well, all these lower branch officials have immunity.
As
All right, let me. I'll let you finish real quick, and then we're gonna go to the judges real quick. Go ahead. You got like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, if they had as applied immunity and an interlocutory right of appeal, I would have no problem calling that immunity. I do think they would have an as applied challenge. I don't know if they'd have an interlocutory right to appeal.
All right, cool. Let's go to Grid first. Let's ask your questions individually and then or together. And then go ahead, and then we'll go to the next judge. What you got, Grid?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with Ryan first. I'm not familiar with you. I apologize. I don't get out much. I have a question, and I'm going to probably kind of repeat this to Pisco, but it seems to me like this boils down to that. Ironically, the president has immunity no matter what, and because of impeachment and conviction, and with those two in place, that is how the president is held responsible for the things that he would do in office. And even, I believe, presidents can be impeached out of office as well. Am I correct on that?
Presidents definitely can be impeached, and that is the primary way of controlling their behavior. Right. Whether or not a president can be impeached after he leaves office is
I know unclear. It's never been done, but in theory, in
theory, it's possible.
Sure.
I don't. I mean, that would have.
I understand it's never been done. I just want to clarify, as a point of law, as a point of our Constitution, and just one last thing, clarify with you. The last I checked, Congress can't change the Constitution. That's Marbury. That's what you brought up, correct? Okay.
Oh yeah. So sure. a few very important points. When we talk about a government of limited powers, that you are 100% right. Congress cannot change the Constitution on its own. It would have to go through the amendment clause, which requires a supermajority. It requires ratification by the states. It's a really onerous process. And that's really important because separating the powers and limiting the powers is how we prevent any branch of government from becoming tyrannical. So when I say Congress can't do this, and when I say that defends our liberty, what I mean is whenever a branch of government attempts to escape the boundaries of the Constitution and do something the Constitution would not let it do, that is an affront against the protections that protect our liberty. And that's why, even if in a particular case, and I don't know you guys, maybe you're Trump supporters, maybe you're not, I don't know. But if you whatever you think of the outcome of this particular case, we're trying to create an enduring system that will last and will protect our liberty regardless of who's president. And letting Congress do something it's not allowed to do cuts strongly against that protection.
Gotcha. All right, Pisco, just a couple of questions for you as well, and then I'll try and be really quick because I know Charlie wants to go. Assuming that Trump doesn't have immunity in these cases, what mechanism is there to prevent any president from being taken to task via lawfare from here on out, including their entire cabinets and everything else? So it seems like that what you're basically saying is all of the protections for this executive doing his job are now gone, and he must now live in fear of Congress and lawfare. And that seems to be where you're going. I just want to be clear.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, it's assuming a lot to think that this immunity would protect other cabinet officials from bad faith lawfare. The reason
I didn't say cabinet. Well, I did say cabinet officials, but really I was talking about the president. I'm sorry, I did throw that in there.
But I want to dwell there just for a second, because the reason I was pressing Ryan on that, with purposes of understanding what he means by the term immunity, because really, if you take a look at if all you mean by immunity is an ability to bring a separation of challenges, separation of powers challenge and interlocutory review, then presumably that would also be for lower executive branch officials. But the opinion seems to proclaim that it's only the president who gets this authority, and also, but I don't understand why, if also going along the same notion, and I promise then I'll get to the thrust of your question. that if the executive branch, if it's just a unitary executive and all power emanates from the president himself, I'm not sure actually why the logic of this opinion doesn't extend to all lower branch executive officials and Department of Justice officials. So I think your question is a good one, but it's presuming that the court would be consistent. I think to be consistent, it would have to apply to lower executive branch officials if you're taking them at their word that the executive branch is a branch unto itself in only the hands of the president. But your question is basically what prevents kind of bad faith lawfare. I would tell you that the thing that prevents the bad faith lawfare is the same thing that prevents it as to everyone else, which is Article 3 courts. It is unconstitutional to have political prosecutions. That is against the Constitution. You have the amazing criminal procedural protections of the Constitution, which people like Justice Scalia, another originalist, defended and has defended in the past. Those protect us from bad faith and malicious prosecutions. You have, again, an entire history where, it's not typical to go after presidents for past conduct while in office. And that can either lead you to one of two conclusions: that Trump is an especially onerous individual, and he is, that would be my conclusion, that did crimes to try to insert himself in office and to maintain power, which is what the complaint alleges, and that everyone else was able to operate, even if you think that this was as originally intended. It certainly wasn't what most people thought. Most people thought throughout the course of the centuries that the president was liable to this kind of indictment, and it protected us for this long. And so I have no reason to think that the courts can't handle these kinds of bad faith situations. A lot of times these prosecutions, even in the Trump case, right, are backfire on the people bringing them. In some ways, you can say that the charges brought in New York backfired on the Democrats. Now, I'm not saying that it was a political prosecution there, but if you were just thinking in terms of pure power politics, Trump's numbers rose substantially after the New York indictments, and the same thing with like the impeachment of Bill Clinton. And so I'm not sure that the current kind of norms in terms of political prosecutions, in terms of it being a public issue, and in terms of the courts, they're plenty sufficient. What we can't handle, though, is the president using his official powers to try to steal an election. That's what we can't handle.
Okay, so great, and I'm sorry I didn't realize you were going to take that long, so I'll just do this one last question. You keep talking. You brought up impeachment and the fact that you understand immunity differently, but I don't see that you're actually understanding immunity differently. You're just trying to ignore the fact that impeachment holds the president accountable, and that is the correct method for prosecuting a president. That's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong about that. If you could clarify, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because look at the words Ryan used. Ryan didn't say Congress cannot with respect to legislation. He said categorically, and so does the court, by the way, he's not alone, that Congress cannot touch these powers. In other words, just like with respect to legislation, Congress trying to legislate to affect these powers, why would it be acceptable for Congress to initiate impeachment proceedings on a power that's in the exclusive and conclusive prerogative of the President of the United States? So I'll give you the following example, right? If you were to have an impeachment proceedings of a typical bribery, right? So what we have here is evidence of money being transferred to the president in exchange for a pardon. Everyone agrees, right? Like that is impeachable, right? Well, what the Supreme Court tells us in this context is you can't actually introduce the evidence of the for the purpose of showing that the pardon was given for the exchange of money, which is totally fucking bizarre, totally absurd as a ruling. So why would it be okay for an impeachment proceeding to inquire into the motives of a pardon, but a criminal prosecution not to inquire into the motives of a pardon, if both are Congress acting in such a way to, again, inquire into the motives of the president's use of his conclusive and preclusive authorities? That's why impeachment is relevant, in addition to the impeachment judgment clause reason that I cited at the start of my talk there. But yeah.
All right, let's go to Charlie.
Lord have mercy. Rich, do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Go to Rich.
Yeah, I have some questions.
Okay.
Two lawyers. I'm so sorry.
I have some quick ones, but I have one that's like foundational for me, like that's critical on the round for me. I guess I'll start with the critical one, because Pisco started with a pretty good observation, which is that there wasn't a reference to the Constitution or to like any founders to sort of give us philosophically how we're supposed to interpret parts of the Constitution to make this argument. But then, to my point of view, Pisco commits the same sin. I'm not hearing this. in academic debate, we call this link level analysis, and I don't see a link to where this immunity either comes from or the authority to prosecute the president comes from. I haven't heard any reference to the Constitution. So far, the only two things I've heard that are external things that I can like sort of look up and read if I wanted to was Barrett's analysis in the recent case and Marbury versus Madison. But I haven't heard like any like what portions of the Constitution either grant this immunity or grant like the power to check the executive in both directions, because I haven't heard that from either debater.
Who do you want to start with, Ryan?
If you don't mind, I have the affirmative,
Yeah,
so maybe it's
100%,
easier. A few points in no particular order. The first is there's plenty in the Constitution that hooks into this analysis. And if you look at the Supreme Court decision and read the main opinion, you'll see all the things that I've been pointing to. So the Supreme Court expressly calls out the structure of the Constitution. They point to Article 1, they point to Article 2, and the limited and separate powers given to each branch of the government. Then they point out that certain powers, and a great example that I referenced earlier, the pardon power, is given to the president, and Congress has nothing to say about it. And then they give the example from 1870, where Congress tried to restrict Lincoln's ability to use the pardon, and the Supreme Court in 1870 correctly ruled that Congress lacked the power to restrict Lincoln's use of the pardon because that is a power that is exclusive to the president. Now, Pisco talked about history and statements of the founders because he knows I am an originalist, and that's, if I were writing the decision, that's the sort of thing that would appeal to me. But it's worth remembering that Justice Roberts is not an originalist, and he's the one who wrote the decision. So I don't think Pisco would say that one must have an originalist framework in order to have a good legal decision. I would assume Pisco would actually disagree with that because he's not an originalist, but he can let us know when it's his turn. That said, there is history that points towards this. Ben Franklin at the Constitutional Convention decried the idea of prosecuting the executive for fear of what it would do and called into mind the fact that whenever it's happened historically, it's been a disaster. Marbury versus Madison, which is, like I said, it's an 1803, 06, I can't quite remember, 03 maybe, case. It's the most important case in the history of our country.
Created judicial review, yeah.
Yeah, it created judicial review, said, by the Constitution of the United States, the president is invested with certain important political powers in the exercise of which he is to use his own discretion and is accountable only to his country in his political character and to his conscience. So this is not ahistoric. This is absolutely how this has always been understood to work when you look at how the law was actually written. The reason there's confusion around this is that there are things for which the president is not immune. For example, if the president left the Oval Office and went to Starbucks and just slapped a barista for no reason, that he's not acting as the president. That is outside his official capacity. He has no immunity based on the Constitution for that action. So just because he's the president doesn't make him immune. What makes the immunity comes from the separation of powers and the delineation of certain powers exclusively to the president, which Congress has no power to regulate, as the government, even in this case, admitted.
Okay, so that gets me to just a quick question, just to follow up on that, because we have three levels of analysis that come out of that recent decision, right? We have absolute immunity, presumptive, and then no immunity at all, right? So what I'm interested in is the Justice Department's understanding of this right now, because it looks like the Justice Department seems to think that they can investigate Obama for what they perceive to be crimes, which presumably they don't believe he's immune to.
I mean, I think they are probably, I have not looked into that deeply, but my strong suspicion is that they are wrong. And that if they attempt to bring any criminal charges, Obama will raise an immunity defense and will win. That's my guess.
Cox, right? And so was Archibald Cox, wasn't he?
Can you give more color?
Special prosecutor in the Watergate matter, when he was investigating obstruction of justice of Richard Nixon, he was wrong.
I think there's the question there is going to be somewhat different, and the reason is there's tons of stuff that this court didn't decide. It decided only the case that was in front of it.
But
The
removal of they cite as one of the core exclusive powers. This is 5 justices signed on to this, is the removal authority of the president, citing Myers and other cases. Under that framework, the notion that President Nixon could be criminally held liable for firing or obstructing justice in some way by ordering around his FBI or getting the CIA to alter evidence or to lie, I mean, that must be beyond the authority for the special prosecutor in that case to prosecute.
Probably. I mean, I don't know because I haven't seen the facts as applied, but it sounds reasonable to me that probably there should have been immunity there. That said, one of the great wisdoms in our country was pardoning Nixon, because he was pardoned, this question was never asked. And the thing in law is sometimes when you ask a question, you get the answer.
Yeah, but that's not the debate.
We don't know whether Nixon had
policy.
immunity. Well,
Yeah, we're not debating policy, are we?
I'm explaining that the reason we don't know whether Nixon would have had immunity under the same analysis is that the question was never asked because a pardon was given. That's why we don't know. They never went to the court.
Why is that relevant to anything? I mean, the question, what I'm asking you basically is, under your version, under your theory of this case, the notion that Nixon could be held liable for like ordering his FBI to lie to Congress, ordering his FBI to like hide evidence, to break into people's homes, right? The real problem, potentially where Nixon maybe could be found liable, but although there's limited evidence on this, is I guess if he ordered private actors to bug the Watergate, what he should be doing is using the FBI to bug the Watergate. And basically you're saying if he did order the FBI to wiretap illegally, purposely the Watergate for political purposes, or to fire people, or to obstruct justice in other ways by like hiding evidence, destroying evidence, that would be beyond the reach of criminal law. I mean, that is what you're saying, right? There's
a million ways that the court could reach a different outcome, but I don't know the facts well enough to give you an answer on that. Let me give you an example. In the Trump case, they made clear that somebody acting as a presidential candidate is not acting within their official capacities, whereas when they act as president, they're in their official capacities. So
order the FBI.
If Nixon gives an order to a PI to bug someone, which is I think one of the examples you said, that he very well might not be in his official capacity.
I said the FBI.
And talking to the FBI, more likely he's in his official capacity, yes. Yeah. But this was not before the court, and we actually don't know a lot about this because the court remanded because it needs more factual development. If, God forbid, there are more cases on immunity, we might learn, but hopefully we never do.
Yeah, but under that framework, I'm not sure why it would be acceptable for, like, let's say Congress issues a subpoena for impeachment, right? A subpoena for impeachment to get some information or documents. So they're saying, we're issuing the subpoena because we want to investigate whether President Nixon or President Trump obstructed justice by firing Mueller or by, issuing a directive to his FBI director to delete evidence. Like, the court should say, Congress can't do this. Congress can't base its subpoena, a legislative subpoena, on trying to inquire as to the motives about why the president pardoned someone. But then we have U.S. versus Nixon. And so this runs right into our prior precedent on the Supreme Court's precedent on the investigations and subpoena stuff. And so I just don't understand how that's like this wouldn't encourage, if we're doing the policy stuff.
There's a through line.
Let's go to, you got another question here? Then
there's a through line right to Nixon in all of this anyway, because we know that like we have people like Roger Stone who come out of the Nixon administration who understand the mindset and tried to put that mindset into the Trump administration. And Nixon himself, when he was interviewed by Frost, sort of famously says that if the president does it, that means it's not illegal. And I've got to think that
he was right about that.
I'm sorry?
That he was right about that?
Well, that's part of what we're here to determine, right? So,
I think he was wrong about this because you asked me a question, but like, where's the history for my side, right? Like, where's the history that this can happen?
Right. So that's exactly what I want to get
to. So first, I would start by saying, there's a bunch of canons of construction of constitutional interpretation. I would say expressio unius est exclusio alterius. The fact that, in other words, this is Latin, the fact that
Can you
a
text me
law,
that way through the?
yeah. Do you want me to send it to it? It's expressio
Yeah.
unius est exclusio alterius. Well,
Yeah,
it's you can just Google it. It's
Yeah.
spelled the normal way. Basically, if a law specifies some items,
It's spelled
it
in
suggests-
normal Latin. Yeah.
yeah, it suggests that the other stuff, the other things that fall within those same categories, aren't included. So, for example, the fact that the Constitutional Convention created legislative immunity, that would seem to suggest, wouldn't it, that they didn't intend to include presidential immunity. The
Okay,
fact
so
that
here we're asking
wait,
what
wait,
this
wait,
means-
and one more thing, and the fact that they weren't thinking of immunity and they didn't have statements about immunity. The Franklin one is distinguishable for other reasons, and there's other statements as well, I think, that suggest that he is liable, including the impeachment judgment clause, which I cited before, which seems to anticipate, it does anticipate these kinds of prosecutions, specifically inquiring into the motives of the president as official actions in the example of a bribery case. But the fact that they aren't thinking potentially, if it's true that they didn't have these long conversations about whether or not there's criminal immunity, would seem that there could not be logically an original public meaning, a public understanding that the executive branch wanted this to exist, right? So in what Ryan starts his whole thing by saying the government is a government of limited powers. That's how he started his entire conversation. If it wasn't in the mind of the original public, right? Not just Ben Franklin, but the public, if it wasn't in their minds to have this kind of criminal immunity, then by definition, it wouldn't exist.
Let's go
Okay,
to.
so I'm not hearing like these foundational links yet from either side. I do hear from the what I regard as the affirmative side, which is the first speaker. I hear this like the only concrete thing that I've heard is the pardon power, which I understand. Like I'm totally convinced that the president's pardon power cannot be questioned because it's explicitly spelled out in the Constitution. But the only other thing I hear is that it's in Article 1 and 2, which is like really big.
There are a lot of powers in that are given to the president, including he's the commander of the armed forces. Right. So presumably, if no one else can command the armed forces but the president is the sole and exclusive commander of the armed forces. So I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to give it to Ryan. The commander of the armed forces of the United States orders the military to enter into the Capitol and arrest every single senator and congressperson. Is that under the ambit of this immunity?
So the clear answer is that we don't know. And the reason we don't know is that the court in no way, shape, or form ruled on whether or not the president has a core and exclusive power in that area. It's just not part of the case. You can go in and Google it. It's not part of the case.
It's an official action, though, right? I understand
it's an official action, but
okay.
that does not
so
mean
it's entitled to at least presumptive immunity, right?
At least presumptive immunity.
At
yes.
least presumptive immunity.
We're getting into deep waters that we have not explained to the judges yet. So just flagging that, just so if we're going to go there. So the first point is it's not part of the case. So if it was part of the case, the court would have ruled on it and I would have a better answer. It wasn't, so I don't.
Because there's not a good answer. There's not a good answer.
The next issue is, sorry, I apologize. You say there's no good answer to that?
There is no good answer to that. That's right. The only answer is that yes. The answer was given, actually. I mean, you cited the oral arguments. Trump's lawyer said under the Fitzgerald test, which is the test that the court adopted, right? The court did adopt the Fitzgerald test. They came to the answer, which is it is an official action. And under the official action, I mean, that test is incredibly, that even if you were, I think this is all core, right? Ordering the military, like imagine it, right? That during the Confederacy, during the Civil War, that the Confederates took over Congress. What, you're going to question Lincoln sending in troops into Congress for the purpose of liberating it? Again, you can't inquire into the motive of how the official power is used. And the court starts by that, saying you can't look into the motive. You can't conflate the power itself with why you would invoke the power. So you can't look into why they're doing something in order to determine whether it's an official action. So in the case that I present, which is the commander-in-chief ordering a military coup, you can't look into why they're doing it. They're just ordering a bunch of troops to arrest some people in the Congress. And in that case, right, what the court adopted was the Fitzgerald test. And that's obviously official action. And you just said it's official. And so the only defense we have to a military coup, criminal prosecution to a military coup, is this at least, it's not total presumptive, it's at least presumptive immunity. It might be absolute immunity, but at least presumptive immunity. And in this case, it would be so simple to have an argument. This is not at all, going to be covered by the small little narrow section that presumptive immunity seems to anticipate.
So Pisco jumps the shark in a few ways here. Oh, sorry.
I'll give you like 10 seconds to respond real quick, but then we're going to go to Charlie just for the sake of time. Go ahead.
10 seconds? Okay, that's a lot to respond to in 10 seconds.
Okay, yeah. You got 10.
I think the most important thing to realize is that we're talking about prosecutions of the president after the fact. So if the president did a coup, prosecutions after the fact aren't protecting you from anything, to be totally clear. It wouldn't matter. That's what a coup is. But in the example that Pisco gives, he's closing his eyes to the reality of how the justice system works. This issue was not decided. And if Pisco thinks that a president could use the military against Washington, D.C., commit treason, attack his own country, and then skip off to Russia and say, I did it for Putin, now I'm a Russian oligarch, ha 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 ha, and that later on we catch him and prosecute him, and the court's not going to inquire into that and say, maybe that's not, maybe what you did right there was outside your role as the president, you've lost your mind. But we don't know because that wasn't part of the case.
No, so it's not the commander-in-chief power in the context of, I want to let the other just talk, but he is accused of using the trappings of his office to try to overturn the election. So you're saying it's so fucking ridiculous that he would do something like this. He did it in a more procedural fashion, no doubt. He didn't use the military, but that's essentially the fact pattern of the allegations in the Washington, D.C. case.
They are not essentially the same. A military coup is not at all what was raised in this decision.
It's not
you're out of your mind.
No, we're talking about core official powers, and it is a core official power of the president to be the commander in chief. If President Lincoln,
do not know that. We do not know that. It might be.
Let me just all right. We're gonna go, Charlie. Charlie, you got questions? I got questions, but I'm just gonna let you ask the questions.
Okay. I'll be honest with you. This has been incredibly complicated. If there's steam coming out of my ears, wheels are turning. Well, I mean, Ryan and Pisco, if Trump were to do the hypothetical scenario that you presented, Ryan, if he were to do crazy stuff, then go off to Russia to be a aristocrat or whatever, would it not be possible, if we were to bring him back and try to prosecute him, would it not be possible for whatever attorneys defending him to say, no, look, he had criminal immunity? Like, would this not be an argument that someone could make?
Yes, I would.
That could complicate legal proceedings.
It absolutely is an argument they could make. It is an argument they would lose, I think, but it is an argument they would make.
Because it's I'm not a law person, but is that not what the issue is? Is that we are giving presidents criminal immunity after they leave office, and they cannot be persecuted for any acts that they, committed in an official capacity.
You're right.
So I feel like we're kind of in the danger zone there, because also, Ryan, you brought up impeachment, but I had to double check on Bill Clinton. I was 1 year old when he was impeached, or he wasn't impeached, almost.
He was impeached.
Oh, he was? Oh, okay.
Yeah. He was not convicted.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was not convicted. He was impeached. But it doesn't seem that impeachment is a very effective process at the end of the day, because it doesn't seem like any president that has been impeached has been forced to leave office. It just feels like, again, maybe that we are, in fact, giving presidents too much leeway to kind of do whatever they want if they're acting in an official capacity without any sort of being held responsible.
I know that we've been going very long, so I'll try to be brief in responding to that. Mm-hmm. The first point is that impeachment is the primary method for corralling a president. It's a political process, and it's a tough political process. So you're right, it's tough. It should be tough. The president was elected. We shouldn't be able to kick him out of office willy-nilly. We don't know what effect impeachment would have on immunity. At oral argument in this case, both sides agreed that if you impeached a president, he would lose immunity and you could prosecute him afterwards. Is that something that we will find out? We don't know. It didn't happen in this case, but at oral argument, both attorneys seem to think that was right. And then as to the last part, and I just want to stress this because it is important, we're starting to talk about policy, which is interesting, and I'm happy to talk about it if it's interesting to the judges. But I want to stress that policy only matters when the Constitution isn't clear. If we're trying to decide what do you and I think is best, that's one question. But here, the Constitution expressly limits Congress's power and expressly gives certain powers exclusively to the president. So since the Constitution is clear, what we think of the policy behind it doesn't matter that much. Like that's what Constitution is. It's there to be the law regardless of what we think of it policy-wise. And I'm yet to hear any reason why Congress should be able to regulate and therefore criminalize the president's core and exclusive powers. And I don't think one will be provided because every lawyer who worked on this case, including the people trying to prosecute Trump, thought it couldn't work that way.
I want to first respond to the notion that the opinion doesn't deal with the effects of impeachment on immunity. Of course it does. It says there's no relation. There's no relation between the impeachment judgment clause and impeachment generally and what you're liable to be prosecuted for. That's why the textual argument from the impeachment judgment clause in favor of my position is so strong, because it would seem to indicate that, yes, and that's why this case is so fucked. Sorry, excuse my French, because they gave him more immunity than he asked for. I mean, even the Trump attorneys, right, the litigants here, they seem to suggest that you could prosecute Trump for official actions after he's been removed from office. But the Supreme Court is clear in the majority opinion that the impeachment judgment clause has no effect on whether or not you have criminal immunity. And of course, that makes sense given their logic. Their logic is that the threat of criminal prosecution would unduly chill a president. Well, that threat exists if you have a carve-out in the impeachment judgment clause, and if you take a purposivist and policy-oriented argument, as the majority did in this case, then of course that incentive structure exists if you have a carve-out for official act prosecutions after an impeachment. You would still have the threat of prosecution for your official acts if all you needed as a procedural step is to require impeachment. So they have definitively asked that. I want to address something else that Ryan said, that like, oh, this doesn't protect you because it only applies to a former president, so you wouldn't have the power of the prosecution during a current. Well, my gosh, we do have this notion of deterrence. You know, most criminal law, one of the big basic precepts of criminal law, why we even have criminal law in the first place, is because it deters action. Why are people upset when like San Francisco decriminalizes? That's a lie, but lowers the penalty for certain crimes or changes what's criminal? Is because they're afraid of the deterrent effect. So of course, having a criminal punishment taken away, potential criminal punishment taken away, is going to lower the amount of deterrence for a criminally oriented president. And it's exactly what you're seeing right now. You're seeing bribes up the wazoo, incredibly corrupt shit happening every single day by the administration. The actual reality is totally what you would expect. Totally what you would expect given the ruling here. And finally, just on this notion of the hypothetical as presented, we can move off the hypothetical if you want to get back to the base of the opinion. I have a question for Ryan. Where would you be if the case that you presented just there of someone running off to Russia after trying to do a military coup and failing, would you be arguing that they had criminal immunity? And what would your argument be, if so?
No, I don't think they would have immunity. Before we get into that, I think you misspoke about something and just want to make sure that we're on the same page. You said that impeachment has no relation. The majority said that impeachment had no relation to immunity. What the majority did is they rejected the argument that you had to impeach prior to prosecution, and that it was a necessary condition. It was a gateway. They rejected that argument. I agree with you. What they did not rule on, and I would be surprised if you could find me anything in the opinion that speaks to this, because I'm 99% sure they did not rule on whether a successful impeachment plus conviction strips a former president of immunity, which was an issue raised at oral argument. They didn't have to decide it because it wasn't in the case. So of course they didn't decide it, but they did not rule that out.
Why would Congress be able to, but think about the logic of the opinion. Why would Congress be able to regulate the president's official conduct after an impeachment? Like, Congress acting through impeachment and acting through legislation is still Congress acting. How can, if it's all about separation of powers, how can Congress achieve what you say they can't by separation of powers bases achieve through legislation through impeachment? That makes sense.
Because clear Supreme Court case law says that the impeachment process is a political process that is designated to Congress that the courts have no role in.
Oh, no,
so Congress
that's whether it's a political question. That doesn't resolve the actual question.
That's exactly the question here. Because if you went to court and you said, court, you must stop Congress from impeaching this president because of your decision in Trump, they're going to say you're out of your mind. That's a political process.
So
that we have nothing to do with.
So you're saying it's
I'm going to let
okay.
you respond, Pisco, and then we're going to go to Charlie again. Go ahead.
So you're saying it's okay for a Congress to impeach a president based on his official and look into the motives of his official conduct. You're saying that's okay?
Am I answering, Gibbs? I don't. What's the?
Yeah. Go ahead, answer. Yeah, like 20 seconds.
I don't.
I have no more questions, Gibbs.
All right, we're just gonna go back to open real quick for the second time. Then you can start us
So
off.
the question, to repeat
Ryan.
it again for the audience. The question is, because there seems to be a notion of separation of powers that Congress can't touch the core and inclusive powers of the president. So the question I present to Congress through legislation: can Congress inquire into the motive of a president's core and exclusive powers through the procedure of impeachment? That's the question.
There's no one to stop them. The impeachment power is a political power that's been delegated to Congress. The courts have been totally clear that they are not going to look into and supervise what and why Congress impeaches someone at all. That's not something they're going to look
I'm
into.
asking
So
you the
yes,
constitutional question. I'm asking you not.
I'm
not
answering
asking
the constitutional question.
No, but that's a political question. I'm saying the courts can't. So the difference for the audience, right? The political question doctrine is: can a court resolve an issue? But that doesn't resolve whether it's unconstitutional. Someone could still stand up in Congress and say, my fellow senators, we have this precedent of Trump versus the United States. It is for us to follow the Constitution, right? The senators swear the same oath of the Constitution as all the justices. So I'm not asking whether the courts could resolve it. Would, in your mind, it be constitutional for Congress to do an impeachment when they're inquiring into the motives behind their core and exclusive powers of the executive? That's the question. Not whether it's
yes, because Congress is the only branch of government that is entitled to decide what is appropriate in that context.
So any impeachment is constitutional? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't see any basis why a court could undo an impeachment or say it's inappropriate.
I'm not asking whether the court could.
Yeah.
You're saying that all impeachments, even for things that aren't high crimes and misdemeanors, are constitutional?
I'm saying there's no body that which you can challenge that. So yes, it is up to Congress. If they say it's constitutional, then it's constitutional.
No, I want you to acknowledge that there have to be some if an impeachment, if they say this is an impeachment that's not based on any high crime or misdemeanor or treason or bribery, we just want to get him out because we don't like how he looks. That would be an unconstitutional impeachment, wouldn't it? Come on.
No, not if they have the votes. If they can get that through the House and that through the Senate, then yeah, they can impeach somebody for having a ham sandwich. There's no limitation on that power.
So Congress decides what's a constitutional Congress. So you're saying that there is no self-standing constitutional standard that Congress should adhere to, right? The Congress has no obligation to follow some standard about what.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but doesn't the Chief Justice run the trial in the Senate
as a ministerial? I mean,
he does, but he doesn't have any real power.
Right. Yeah. And
okay.
Chief Justice Roberts. I think
it's a good point, though. It's a good point.
Yeah. No, but I just want to be clear about something. Obviously, right? The Constitution says Congress may impeach for a high crime or misdemeanor. That's what it says. And obviously, Congress has an obligation to follow that. Now, it's true, right, that the courts can't determine whether or not a high crime or misdemeanor occurred, but Congress is bound by that. And if Congress all decided, hey, we're just going to impeach this guy because we don't like it, of course that would be unconstitutional. Now, a court couldn't resolve that, but it would be unconstitutional. And your unwillingness to give that up, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Pisco, there are 3 branches of government, right? They're the ones that decide what are constitutional. That's how it works. The courts, you've admitted, aren't going to do it. Congress wants to do it. That's why they have a supermajority in the House and the Senate and we're able to convict. The president doesn't get a say because he's the one being impeached. So, yes, in the scenario you are outlining, what is constitutional is determined by Congress. They are the only branch of government empowered to make that determination.
I truly, so anything that's a political question, you think, there's not a constitutional dimension to it that can be analyzed from an.
There is a constitutional dimension. The decision has been allocated.
So the impeachment can be totally spurious. The impeachment can be totally devoid from law in that sense. Barring the procedural elements, which I think probably a court would decide to rule on, right? Like I think a court would decide, like, did you even have a supermajority?
Yeah, I think that sort of thing they would. Yeah, we agree on that.
So I think that there's probably some role there. But in terms of the substance there, I mean, man, dude, like Congress has a self-standing requirement, obligation to follow the Constitution. It is insane to me that you would say that no impeachment, no matter how bizarre, no matter how, explicit they are. We are doing this even though the Constitution forbids it, right? They even put that there. We don't give a fuck about the Constitution. We are just impeaching him because we can. And you would say that that is totally constitutional to do. That is ridiculous. That's not how our Constitution works. The Constitution, yeah, different branches have different roles in interpreting it, but everyone has an obligation to follow the Constitution. And what you sound like is kind of like a purposivist who's like living Constitution. The Constitution means whatever Congress says it means.
What Pisco consistently tries to get around in this argument, and he has to try to get around it because it's crushing for his position, is that the structure of the Constitution is what determines what is constitutional and what is not in many cases. Like, for example, there's canon Supreme Court law that says just because the Constitution doesn't say the word presidential immunity, you can't control F it, that doesn't mean there's no immunity. The court decided that in the Nixon era. And they decided that because the structure of the Constitution is itself part of the Constitution.
Fitzgerald was wrong. Fitzgerald was wrongly decided.
So this case was wrong. Wait, hold on. How many Supreme Court cases do you, Pisco, junior attorney, think that you are in charge of saying what's wrongly decided?
First of all, so you agreed with Dobbs, didn't you? You have no problem overturning cases that are wrongly decided. Fitzgerald is just has invented civil immunity that doesn't exist anywhere in the Constitution as well. So let's not pretend that this court cares about respecting stare decisis and precedent. I think one of the big mistakes, as is recognized, by the way, not just me, dipshit, but also people like Akhil Amar. Do you respect Akhil Amar?
I don't even know who Akhil Amar is. Go ahead.
I mean, there are constitutional scholars who raise the position, so don't try your demeaning bullshit. Say that Nixon versus Fitzgerald was wrongly decided. I think it was wrongly decided. It's also not necessary. You don't have to apply Nixon versus Fitzgerald to the criminal context. But there is no place in the Constitution that says, oh, you absolutely need civil immunity, or civil immunity was understood at the time of the founding of the Constitution that we'd have this kind of doctrine of civil immunity. I mean, let's be honest about that. It's not there. The text is not there.
Again, the reason that Pisco is harping on whether you can control F presidential immunity, which we all know you can't, even though he's read other Supreme Court case that says that doesn't matter, but he says that case is wrong too. And the reason he's harping on policy is because the core argument, which is about the structure of the Constitution, he has no response to.
No, there's a response.
What is your response to the argument that there are core and exclusive powers that Congress cannot regulate?
I'm going to let Pisco respond, and then we're going to go to judges again. For one question each. Go ahead, Pisco.
There is absolutely a response. The notion is that the structure of the Constitution does not require it, that there's nothing necessary about having personal immunity, that all you need are normal separation of powers checks. Now, if he defines immunity to mean normal separation of powers checks plus interlocutory review, he's just redefined what immunity is. That's what we were talking about in the very first section. And so if that's what you mean by immunity, then okay, but that's not what people mean by immunity. And so normal separation of powers concerns are fine to deal with, like inherent conflicts between the law or its application and the core executive powers that you're talking about, or the president's powers in general. So there's a response, but there's no logical necessary implication into having this kind of wide sweeping criminal immunity, and there's no history to support it, right? If it were one or the other, if it were logically necessary to have this kind of immunity, then fine, you have this. Structurally, it is implied. Or if it were like supremely policy wise necessary, or in terms of very, very helpful or very, very useful, then maybe even you can make a purpose of this argument, even though we're supposed to be in the originalist frame of mode. But it's not a good policy. It is not necessarily required, and there's no good history to support it. That's why you have to point to things like Youngstown and Fitzgerald, and even the case that you cite, Marbury versus Madison. That is not a criminal immunity case. That's just applying normal separation of powers considerations. And in that case, striking down an act of Congress, that happens all the time, right? That happens as a matter of course, and that's not immunity.
Gibbs, can I try to simplify this, or do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll give you 30 seconds, and then we're going to go to the judges.
There is no difference between saying you are immune from criminal prosecution under this law and saying you have a challenge to say that Congress was not allowed to regulate your conduct under this law. At the end of the day, they both result in you can't do that. You can't charge that crime.
Self-defense immunity.
It's the same thing.
Self-defense immunity. Is self-defense immunity?
No, it's an affirmative defense.
So what's the difference? It results in you not being liable. So what's the difference?
It's not an as applied constitutional challenge, which you know, and you don't get interlocutory appeal. So it is categorically different in both ways.
Wait, but in the case of, like, let's say a public protection defense that you're going to raise, right? I'm raising this defense that my conduct, let's say as operating as a police officer and shooting this individual, this was authorized by law, right? I would raise that, and the court would determine, well, was this cop actually authorized by law to do this shooting on the job? That's what they should have done here. The difference is, so if you want to strip away the semantic difference on immunity, let's just talk about what is the result of these semantic difference, right? The result in my case is you still have separation of powers concerns, right? If there's some application of law or the law itself that conflicts with the president's operation of law, you can absolutely raise that. But the difference is, in my case, you can assess whether the president's conduct itself was legal.
No, you can. No, you couldn't, because that's what interlocutory appeals mean. You bring the charge, the president says, I have immunity, or I have an as-applied challenge, whatever language you want to use, it doesn't matter. And then the case stops and it goes up on appeal on that point. So you never get further conduct if there actually is immunity, if it actually is the case that the Constitution forbids you from criminalizing that act. You would absolutely not get to the thing that you just raised, but you know this because
sure you could. No, that's not true. That's not true. You could have interlocutory review, and in the context of, take all the facts as alleged by the indictment and have interlocutory appeal on that while preserving your ability to fight it in trial. So there's absolutely nothing inconsistent with.
But you're not going to proceed in parallel.
I'm gonna actually linearize to get you to acknowledge that it would not be inconsistent to have what I have and also interlocutory review with with deference to the facts as alleged in the indictment while preserving the president's ability to argue more vigorously and present more facts on trial. There's nothing inconsistent. There's no contradiction, correct?
No, but the issue is that they don't happen on the same timeline. You ask for interlocutory appeal, the trial stops, it goes up and it comes back down. And if you were immune, the trial is over. So if there is immunity, you never get to the question that you're asking.
That's one of the problems in this case.
Can I ask a question? I need to ask a question just for my own sake here real quick. You're arguing procedure. Is that what you're talking about here with the appeal process? It's going to go up and then down?
Yeah, we're getting super autistic about a really, really narrow lawyerly point about what immunity is.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what was happening right there. You're arguing about the... Okay, cool. I'm going to let you respond, Pisco, here real quick. I'm going to give you 15 seconds, and then we are going to judges for second time.
One of the big problems in this case is there wasn't further factual development or briefing on the kinds of communications that were happening between the Justice Department and the president. And they just basically said all the communications are immune, and they didn't give the prosecution or the government a chance to further develop that. That would have been nice. That would have been nice to do besides running the gun, if you're really talking about modesty here by the judges.
All right, let's go to Charlie. You're going to be first question. Everybody gets one, judges, because we're running low on time here. You go ahead and lead us off, Charlie. All right, unless you don't want to, then we're going to go to iCount. You got one. All right, and guys, try to keep y'all's answers under like a minute and a half.
I love this. This is a lot of fun, dude.
Good.
This is a really awesome format. I love it.
No, I'm enjoying it tremendously.
Good. I'm glad you're having fun. I like it. Good. So go ahead and we'll let you start us off, iCal.
Yeah, this is closer to academic debate than I usually see on Twitch. So this is fun. Okay, so I'm thinking about. I hate to move out of strictly judicial stuff and into politics, but it sort of connects because I remember the discourse on Obama's phone and his pen about how executive power ought to be limited so that he can't do that kind of stuff. No, Obama. Okay. Back in the day said, I have my phone and I have my pen. And he was referring to executive orders. That was after he lost Congress. He had a trifecta. He lost the trifecta. He wanted to continue his agenda through executive orders. Okay. And there was a lot of discourse at that time about how wrong that was. But then also, there was that recent... what do you call it? Truth Social post that Trump put out just in the last couple of days, saying that trying to extend his power even further, not just against the other two branches of the federal government, but also over states. He said that states are merely agents of the federal government. You can look it up. It's something he said very recently. So this. The expansive perception of power seems to be growing, and I just don't know aside from impeachment, are there any checks from any branch of government or the states that can limit presidential power?
Great question,
Absolutely.
and I think
It's a
that Brian
great
and I
question.
agree. Brian and I probably agree on the terms of the presidency that we're both worried about the expansive nature of the presidency. I just don't know why, if we both agree on that kind of basic premise, why he supports this decision, because it seems to encourage that if what we care about is the outcome here.
So it's a great question, and to answer you, Pisco and I agree on this. I've talked about this a lot. We're both concerned that the executive branch has become too powerful, and I think that's a fair concern to have. The check on an executive order like that one is the courts, because we're talking about criminal prosecution of the president, right? That is one check that you could have on the president. But for what the example you're raising, the president has an executive order that exceeds his authority. The check is the same it's always been. You go to court and you challenge it. And because you challenge it, then, when the states go into court and say the president can't do this to us by executive order, I don't have a crystal ball. I bet they're going to win if he does that. And then it won't work. So that's the check that exists on that power.
I think it's a bit bizarre, because I don't understand why it is that the courts can even question whether the president can do anything, right? Like, if all of this is about establishing a president with vigor and with energy, an energetic and vigorous president, right? And the argument seems to be like, if the only Federalist citation in the majority opinion is to that line from Hamilton, which is generally that the president should have more energy and vigor, which I agree that the Constitution set up a powerful president. But that same kind of incentive-based argument can be applied to the regular power of judicial review in Marbury versus Madison. And to be honest, we all know, and the people around the president have argued, that Marbury versus Madison was wrongly decided. Project 2025 puts the judiciary in its crosshairs. At every stage, this court seems to be giving up more and more authority to check the president's action in terms of judicial review. We just recently had the decision in terms of nationwide, or I should say universal, injunctions. And at every stage, Trump is walking into courts with the Trump versus United States decision and trying to claim not just more immunity based on criminal stuff, but also in terms of injunctions and what the courts can do. So I'm very, very fearful of this decision that is being weaponized by the Trump administration, basically to further erode Article 3 checks. And soon we're going to have very little check on the presidency. And I think we're already there. I mean, like, he's doing what I take to be obviously illegal firings. He's obviously illegally, unconstitutionally freezing funds that Congress has the core exclusive powers of appropriations. And the courts, sometimes they're weighing in, but more often than not, this Supreme Court is giving him all the deference and all the checks and refusing to hold him to account in ways that he should be.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to
go ahead.
Just to point out that Pisco is completely far afield from the actual issue that you guys are deciding, whether this was a correct decision in the immunity case. What Pisco is talking about are broader challenges in the judicial system, and whether or not Trump has immunity has absolutely nothing to do with whether a court, which is ruling on whether his executive order is lawful, will strike it down or not. They're completely separate issues. And again, I just want to flag that the reason we're going down these politics wormholes is because Pisco doesn't want to do the structural argument. The structural argument is the point.
This is bad faith. I have to interrupt you, because I'm going down this route because the judge asked a question and said, I know we're moving up off the judicial aspect of it. I want to talk about politics. I'm going to wait for him to put his earphones back on. Ryan, I'm going to get an acknowledgement from you that I'm just following the track that the judge asked and that I'm not avoiding jack shit. And so this was a very cheap snipe. And I want you to acknowledge that I was just answering the concern that the judge was raising. That's right?
I think you took a narrow question and you ran as far and as fast as you could with it. And you ran as far as fast as you could with it because talking about politics broadly is useful for your framing of the case. It's useful for your argument that Trump acts in bad faith, but none of that actually matters for the thing that the judges are looking at, whether this decision was rightly decided. I think it's a good tactic. I'm just pointing out that you used it.
We are going to run far and fast to the next judge. Grid, you got a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I hope you guys can answer this relatively quickly. So, and basically, I've listened to both arguments. Both arguments were well made. However, my question is, what it seems that both of you are pointing out is that Congress is basically ceding its power to the executive branch and the judicial branch by not actually using its power of impeachment when necessary, and therefore, this argument of immunity and whether or not the immunity should be conveyed should never have happened in the first place because we have an impeachment process in place. I'm curious how you would answer that, because it seems like more and moreover, Congress is not doing its job. The courts can only do their job within within their realm, and therefore, if Congress isn't going to do their job, then the president has to rely on whatever means necessary. And I don't care who's president at that point. And I'm really interested to see how you guys answer this.
I'm eager to answer that question, really, because unlike Ryan, Mitch McConnell certainly thought that there's such possible things as an unconstitutional impeachment. And the basis given for why Mitch McConnell chose to vote down the charges from the House in terms of Trump's second impeachment, where he was impeachment, was precisely because it was unconstitutional to do so. And on the one hand, Trump was arguing during that impeachment proceeding that it was unconstitutional for Congress to have that proceeding in the first place, that they had to dismiss, and claiming that the way to have accountability, and Mitch McConnell also argued this, for Trump's actions was to have a criminal process. And so I agree with you that Congress definitely didn't do its job in holding Trump to account after the second impeachment. But yeah, that's a huge problem. And Congress, but another way that Congress has and is trying to regulate the president's actions is by passing neutral laws of general applicability that it is standard fucking fair in this country that no man is above the law. And so when Congress passes neutral laws of general applicability, like it's a crime to do briberies, it's a crime to obstruct justice, it's the presumption over the course of many years and over the course of centuries really was that these crimes apply to the president's conduct too.
Right.
So I agree with you that impeachment is the primary method for controlling the president. I disagree with Pisco's characterization of what I said. He asked me a hypothetical earlier that said, if the legislature said it's unconstitutional, would it be unconstitutional? Okay, yeah. I said they're the ones who get to decide. So when Mitch McConnell, who is in the legislature, takes a position on that, that's unsurprising to me. They're the body that gets to decide that, and he's whipping votes on that exact topic. In Pisco's hypothetical, he said that everybody was passing an unconstitutional impeachment, which in fact is not what happened because Congress decided not to do that. In terms of the gridlock effect, and this is well beyond the immunity decision, but it's just a point that I think is important to reference. Gridlock is good. We have a limited government. If Congress can't pass a law, then maybe they shouldn't pass a law. And maybe the lesson we should take away from all of this is that we should be suspicious of presidents who are trying to end around Congress just because they're gridlock. There is a solution in the Constitution to what happens when Congress is gridlocked. The answer is they don't do anything and the states take a stab at it. Our problem today is that almost all of our decision making is done at the federal level and we've minimized our states inappropriately. So yeah, there is gridlock in Congress. Yeah, presidents have abused that to extend their executive authority, but no, that doesn't have anything to do with the question of whether or not the immunity case was rightly decided.
I want to finish on the notion of this impeachment stuff. You were asked a question about whether an impeachment could be unconstitutional. So I'm asking you to get in the head of a legislator in a presumptive impeachment proceeding, and the charges from the House are, yeah, this isn't a case or controversy. This isn't a high crime or misdemeanor. Would you, as a senator, in that kind of bogus impeachment situation, would you take the position and vote no because it is unconstitutional? It's unconstitutional.
Yeah, of course, because in that case,
unconstitutional fucking
because in that case, I would be in the body of Congress that's charged with making that determination.
As an observer, you would say that too.
As an observer, I might say it, but my opinion wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
What happens is if Congress votes and says this impeachment is good, then it's good. If they vote and say it's not good, then it's not good. That's the end of the story. So yes, a Congressperson will have a view that matters on whether or not an impeachment is constitutional because they're the ones who get to decide it.
And and you would have a view on it, right?
But my view doesn't matter. That's the point I'm making.
No, of course it does. Of course it does.
We're gonna go to Charlie, and then we're gonna right after y'all answer Charlie's question. We're gonna go to closings, and we'll start. But go ahead, Charlie. Go ahead. What you got for us?
God.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
I don't know. I don't know how to phrase this question. I mean, if you had to have a primary source of why you think president having criminal immunity is constitutional, unconstitutional, what would be, what would you, select as your primary source, your main body of evidence? The document that best supports your position.
Article 1 and Article 2 of the Constitution, which lay out that Congress has certain powers, the president has certain powers, and there are certain powers that are given to the president that do not overlap with the list of powers given to Congress. And that's why they can't regulate things that are in the core and exclusive power of Congress. And I would point you to that decision from 1870, but I think that Article 1, Article 2 are the ones that really carry the weight here.
All right, Peace Cap.
Okay.
I would point first to the impeachment judgment clause with respect to bribery and the fact that it anticipates criminal prosecutions on bribery, which relates to things we're talking about here, and for treason, which are all things where the mental state and motivation are key to those kinds of prosecutions. So that's the best textual source. And also the best is the evidence of absence. The fact that in Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, there is no text of an immunity clause that there is with respect to Congress. Like, there's an immunity clause for Congress and there's not for the president. We should read into that. And then finally, the evidence of absence with respect to the conversations, right? There's no conversations during the founding era that discuss, oh my God, well, should we have criminal immunity? This is such a bad idea after a revolution over a king. And so the evidence of absence plus the impeachment judgment clause, and then ultimately that it's not necessary, it's not logically necessary from, it's not logically necessary to the operation of Article 2, and we operated most of our history without it. But yeah, the best sources are within the Constitution itself.
All right, let's go to closings. Y'all each gonna get 3 minutes. So I'll start with Pisco since you were the neg on this this debate, I believe. You get to go first on this part, so go ahead, and you got 3 minutes starting whenever you start speaking.
There is no historical documentation that shows that the original public meaning, that the public understood, that when they were enacting Article 2 of the Constitution, that they understood what they were doing was giving criminal immunity to the president. If there was such evidence, don't you think Trump would present it? Don't you think that there would be newspaper clippings and like, oh my God, these anti-federalists, right? These anti-federalists who were talking about how the Constitution should not be ratified. Look at this document. This document is giving criminal immunity. There is no evidence that the original public meaning understanding of Article 2 implied this kind of criminal immunity. There was, at that time, there were parallel immunity provisions in state constitutions that were excluded in the Article 2. There is the limited immunity clause that exists for legislative officials that's in the Constitution itself. And then over the course, it's just not necessary to think as a structural matter that you would need this kind of criminal immunity. Both Barrett says it's shorthand, that immunity, she puts it in scare quotes, that what she means by immunity is what Ryan is referring to here, like this kind of interlocutory appeal and normal separation of powers principles. That's just not what is meant by immunity under the normal notion of what immunity is. If that's all that is meant by immunity, then fine. Ryan should just give up the game and say that the majority is wrong on the evidentiary rule, that they're wrong in terms of the scope of what's going to be provided, and that the court should be checking to see whether the president's actions which are like obstructing the official proceeding with respect to January 6th and basically sending his goons to try to take over the country, that the court should have some semblance of checking whether that's legal before they rule as a matter of separation of powers, that Congress can't target the president over that. And I think that it's very telling on the impeachment matter that Ryan, I don't think, has a very satisfying answer for why Congress should be allowed as a constitutional matter to inquire into the core and preclusive authorities of the president in an impeachment matter, and then afterwards he's liable for prosecution on that impeachment matter, but not for legislation. If it's core and exclusive, then surely Congress can't touch it either with an impeachment or with an indictment based on a congressional statute. My name is Pisco. You should follow me at Pisco's Hour on YouTube and Pisco on Twitch. And thank you so much for the debate. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks for being here. All right, Ryan, you got 3 minutes whenever you start.
Always fun to argue with Pisco. He's well-informed and worth a follow. Check him out. I don't have a channel even a fraction of his bandwidth, but maybe you'll follow me too. I started this conversation by talking about the pardon example because it's the clearest one and it's the easiest to understand. And it is totally clear on Supreme Court precedent. It is totally clear on the logic and the structure of the Constitution that Congress cannot criminalize the pardon because they lack the power to do so. And that's the only question really here. If Congress lacks the power to criminalize something, they can't send you to jail for it. Therefore, you are immune. That's the issue. Now, we've talked about a lot of different things, but that core structural issue is really undisputed. And that's why I'm going to point you again to the fact that at oral argument, the lawyers who were trying to oppose Trump, who were trying to put him in jail, said, Justice Gorsuch asked them, did you agree that there are some core functions of the executive that a president's conduct that Congress cannot criminalize? And he said, yes, you cannot criminalize certain core functions. And that's the whole ball game. That's immunity right there. Even the lawyers against Trump agree on that. And for Pisco to be right, the lawyers who were prosecuting Trump have to be wrong. The Supreme Court has to be wrong in this case. And as Pisco admitted, they also have to be wrong in another case called Nixon v. Fitzgerald. And I guess they have to be wrong about the pardon case from the 1870s. The structure of the Constitution is clear, and it's enough for you to decide the case. The policy, everything else, doesn't matter. The Constitution protects our liberty through the separation of powers and through limited powers. We might not love the outcome in a particular case. We might think we would have preferred it to go differently. That's not the point. We're building a Constitution to last and to protect our liberties into the future, and that's what the Supreme Court did in this case when they recognized the limitations on Congress's powers. Thanks. Have fun.
All right, judges, just go ahead and DM me who y'all think won privately real quick, and then we'll come to y'all in a second. Tomorrow, guys, if you're here and y'all like debate, we're going to be debating and discussing Russia-Ukraine post-Alaska summit tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we're having another one of these. It's going to be over whether or not comic book Superman would join ICE. It's going to be pretty entertaining, I think. And then Friday, we're on some sort of dating show. I don't really know the details, but that'll be good. So check it out. It'll be fun stuff. Maybe somebody pops my balloon. It'll be a great time. Anyway, that's what we got going on. Oh, it's Saturday. We're debating the shrimp welfare guide, and I think that'll be fun. If you know my positions on beef, so it'll be good stuff. I'm excited. While we wait, anybody got anything they got going on that's want to shout out? What's your exciting news?
I'm going to be talking to Drew Pavlov again soon.
All right,
that'll be cool. You guys should stay tuned for that.
All right.
I'm supposed to be chatting with Counter Connor sometimes this week, so I'll figure out. It hasn't been scheduled yet, so I'll let you guys know. And if you're doing shrimp welfare, I did a shrimp welfare debate on Wick's panel, so you should look at the video either on his or on my channel and see what tactics worked and what didn't.
Ryan, are you coming to DebateCon?
I just learned DebateCon existed when you asked the question, so probably not. But
well, I'm having an event there. I'm hosting an event, an opening for DebateCon, and you should come to my event, and then maybe go to DebateCon because it's going to be really rad. It's in Nashville.
Hit me up in DMs. I would very much like to come. We'll see if it can work.
Yeah, I'll get that from GIBBs. And,
fantastic. We'll make it happen. We'll get the networking going. All right, I got the results, and I know some people got hard out, so let's hop to it. We'll start with Grid. Who do you think won and why?
I'm going to be honest. I think Ryan took this one almost from the word go. Thought his arguments were really pretty well framed. My problem with Pisco is you just kind of said the same thing over and over again, and you kept leaning away from the fact that impeachment is the actual control, and so therefore, honestly, immunity is not needed. Although in this case, obviously, it was used, which is weird, and a completely different argument. So I had to go with Ryan. Ryan made a better case. He had, and I didn't. Yeah, I actually came into this really not knowing a whole lot about it other than that immunity and impeachment seemed weird bedfellows. So, all right, that's it.
All right, let's go to iCal. Who do you think won and why?
Okay, so I'm still trying this whole debate. I was still trying to struggle with, normally when you make an argument, you try to prove uniqueness and brink and things like that. But the key thing you need is a link. Yeah, I need to be linked to where this legal theory comes from in a way that I can understand as a layman. And I still had a hard time. I think the the most substantive thing that I get from Ryan in terms of the link as to where this immunity comes from is the fact that Article 1 and 2 like spell out two different branches, and that therefore like maybe one doesn't tread on the other. That I understand the argument about pardon power, but I also know how pardon power is spelled out in the Constitution. That gives me a direct link, and I never saw like a direct link to specific lines in the Constitution that gave out that immunity. It's just this sort of vague claim about the structure of the Constitution, which kind of reminds me of Roe v. Wade reasoning, where they had to go to three different parts of the Constitution and create this sort of Frankenstein structure in order to make their argument. It's sort of, maybe that's not what it is, because I don't understand legal theory enough, but that's what it seems like to me. And so, but also, Pisco doesn't give me anything either. I get some sort of like vague references to court cases, but I don't see any like specific link, like hard link in the Constitution saying this is the power that that the Constitution gives in order to check the president in this particular way for prosecutions and things like that. I also don't understand the argument that Congress can't regulate, because in my mind, this debate isn't over Congress regulating. It seems to be about over the courts regulating, right? Because that's what the case is responding to, is all these things going to the court. And they're basically saying the courts have no authority over here too. So if Congress can't regulate and the courts can't regulate, I still don't understand where those powers come from. But because I don't get these hard links from either side, it's very difficult for me to decide. What I have to do now is I have to go to presumption. Who has the burden of proof? And like in my mind, there's two things that tell me where I think the presumption should be. There's this idea that immunity clauses do exist in other parts of the Constitution, but they don't exist with regards to the executive branch. I didn't hear a really good argument for that. And the second one was this. Well, maybe even it's an aside, but this argument that gridlock is good is really in tension with the argument that the executive needs to be a vigorous executive, right? Which is the argument for immunity. Like, it seems like this gets rid of gridlock, doesn't add to it. And because we're not deciding a legal issue, right? Like, at one point, Ryan said, to support his argument, he said, well, this is a Roberts decision. This is what Roberts said, right? But if we're asking whether or not it was wrongly decided, we can't then say, because Roberts it's circular, it seems to me, to appeal to Roberts' thinking if we're deciding ourselves whether or not we think, we can't say SCOTUS is the one that decided SCOTUS. And so, because for those reasons, especially for the immunity clause statements that were said, I have to give presumption to Pisco's side. So this is what I think, though, because I'm really disappointed in not being able to have these links. This is what we call a low point win in academic debate, where I'm not really happy with, I'm really not confident in my decision because of that. But because of where I have to give presumption, I've got to vote for Pisco.
All right, last but not least, Charlie. No pressure.
Oh yeah, the tiebreaker.
Fuck. Well, all right. So I personally take Pisco's side in the sense that I think that, a president having criminal immunity is crazy and scary and bad and freaks me out. But I do feel that Ryan was slightly more persuasive because he seemed to stay. There were a couple times, Pisco, where I think that you brought in other but related topics, but it wasn't maybe I'm not very quick. It wasn't immediately, clear to me how it was relevant to the argument at hand, which was a little bit frustrating. And I do feel like Ryan stayed more on topic. And so for that reason, sorry for being like a real jury and going off of vibes. I would say that Ryan won.
All right. Well, that was a good one. Exciting stuff. I hope to have y'all both back soon. I like, we need more lawyers. The lawyers always seem to do well in these debates. So I like that. So yeah, hopefully y'all come back. We'll get you on more of these, but congrats to Ryan. Thank you for coming, Pisco. Thanks everybody. I have a heart out as well. So I'm going to rate out to somebody. Anybody streaming for a while?
For a little bit.
Well, I mean, I'm
You
on
go to-
Twitch, but I'm also on YouTube, and I can be up for a little while.
All right.
We'll
I'll
talk
raid
some
one of y'all
shit.
here.
I'll talk shit
Thank
about
y'all so
everybody.
much. Yes, thank y'all so
Later,
much, guys. Y'all be good. Appreciate it.
Thank you for
you all.
having
It
me
was a lot of
on.
fun.
This was fun and confusing.
Ryan,
but
I'll get your
fun.
information from GIBBs, and I'll hit you up.
Grid, how do I raid
Absolutely,
on
would
YouTube?
love that.
Grid,
Talk
can you
later,
tell me
guys.
can you tell me how to raid on YouTube?
You go to you go to customization, go down to redirect.
Customization, is that on
Studio. You gotta be in studio.
in studio, like on my
Yeah, so you go to you go to your pull up the live stream, right?
Yeah,
And
let me
at the
just raid on
bottom it's
my
gonna say
Twitch.
edit video. You go to you go to edit video, and that's gonna take you to studio. And then you're gonna see customization, and then you scroll down to redirect.
Okay. Go to customization. Hold on. On my YouTube side. Okay.
Yeah.
On the website.
Yeah. So when you if you're on YouTube, if you have you should have the live stream pulled up, right? You're watching it. You're monitoring.
Customization.
Yeah, customization, redirect, and then you need the link for which I'll give you right now. Let me find it. Whoops, I goofed up. Give me a second. You need the link, which I'll give you right now.
I don't see a redirect. Is it on the home tab?
No. Down at the. All right, so give me one second.
Add link. Oh,
Are we still streaming?
I've
Yeah, you're
ended
still
my
live on
stream.
mine.
I've ended my Twitch one.
Yeah, I'm still
Oh,
live.
is that the channel URL?
Yeah, you'll need to. Let me see how I do this. I'm going to give you the link to my stream. Right there, got it. There you go. You just copy that, paste it into the box where it says. What does it say? It says. So you click redirect, and that'll open up another window, and then that's going to give you a. Like a search tab, and you just put the link in there to pull up my stream, and then you just click save or click and save, and then you're
All
there.
right, let's see. All right, well, I'll try to get it done here. Hopefully, I get it done. If not, I'll just have you walk me through a different night.
Yeah.
Baby steps. All right, Papa, y'all be good. Thank you, Grid.
All right, man. See you, dude. We'll see if we get a raid here in a second.
I'm trying here. We're in the.
It's really. I mean, it sounds hard, but it's really easy. But so
I'm on the customization. I see channel, contact info, links, video, watermark.
Wait, hang on. No. All right. So go to your live stream. Pull up in your live stream of your YouTube video. Right, and at the bottom there's going to be a blue thing that says edit video. You click it.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's see if this works. Here. All right, I'm sending it.
All right,
you're gonna have 4 people. All right, you be good.
We're glad. All right, man.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Iko, good to see you again. We'll see you later.
Yeah, you too.
I'm gonna drop this down.
This was a lot of fun.
It actually was a lot of fun. Those guys were good. I'll be on tomorrow night, so we'll have some good times. All right.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind those little short debates that you guys did.
Yeah, did you like that? I know. Yeah, it's a really good training tool. It's a lot. It's really fun. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, it's really a good deal. So, but yeah, we have a lot of fun with it. It's I don't know what we're going to do this week, but we're kind of going back to the regular format where. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I haven't seen the new Superman. Well, one of my audience did today. Is a flop. All right. Yeah. 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 All right. I'm gonna go entertain my audience, and we're gonna talk about housing affordability really quickly. So that's gonna be fun. Yeah. 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 Hey, by the way, Gibbs, our next target market, I think, is San Antonio. I'll be buying a bunch of houses out there really soon. I know. Well, you guys are starting to get some factories moving out there that way and things like that. So yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of money. I think a lot of jobs are going to be. I tend to. I don't follow land value as much as I do jobs. If people can if people can afford to live, then they're going to buy houses. So and they're going to rent houses. So both of those things work for me. So, but anyway, I'm out, guys. I'll see you later. All right, all right, all right. Mr. Alley Cat, yeah, well, it's not StreamYards, but go to my Discord. If you're in it, go to the mod chat. I'm going to throw the link up here. Just give me 1 second. Let me grab it. I didn't have it up. So I'll give the link here. I got the link. You go to my Discord, which is called The Shed, and you can go to the waiting room, and then the link is the links in the waiting room are the I'll throw you the link, man. Hang on, give me a second. And there we go. Yeah, I can be on for a few minutes, guys. There's the Discord link. You go to the waiting room. One of the mods will give you the link to come in. I know it's tough, but $2 came in, by the way, from K2 Keep On Trucking. Wonder what she is drawing. Actually, apparently she was making notes, which is both shocking and kind of weird, but it's all right. It's cool. It's cool. So, yeah, that was a really good debate. It was an excellent it was a very interesting discussion. It was an excellent example of how people like Pisco. He knew that his position honestly was indefensible, so he just kept circling and circling and circling and keep saying the same thing over and over again. And then on the other side, I think Ryan, honestly, he tied everything up. I don't really know what Ico was talking about, but that was I didn't see any. I mean, honestly, that dude just got lit up. So yeah. All right, Ghost is getting Alley Cat the link. We're going to we're going to get some stuff going on here. Kyle, Texas has the gathering of Kyles. That's true. Taylor, Texas will need lots of homes renters. Samsung City is nearing completion. Over 12,000 people need a place to live. That's what I'm talking about. I follow jobs. I don't follow home trends or property values or any of that other shit. People can't, it doesn't matter what the land value is. Paste. Oh, that's wrong. I don't know why it's yeah, it goes. I don't know what's going on with the way you're posting that link. Here, let me I got you here. No, it's cool, man. I got you. There you go. I got you. Yeah, there's something going on with the way he was posting it. I think it's just the way it was getting copied and pasted. So it's fine. At any rate, while we're waiting on Alley Cat to get up here, yeah, I don't. It's an interesting thing when we start talking about land value and land investment and all of that kind of thing, because there's a real there's a lot of different ways you can talk about it, and I choose to talk. Whoa.
Hold on, echo. Yep.
There's a real.
Got it.
All right, cool. How are you tonight, Alley Cat?
I'm doing good. Okay, so for background for the viewers, what happened is that Grid came on to Rob's chat today, and actually there's a couple, I think it happened yesterday too, and they started talking about home pricing. And it's interesting because like old guys like us are like, well, wait, this seems a little silly. And so I actually took a lot of time to do a lot of research into the subject, and there's right and wrong on both sides. And that's kind of just what I wanted to cover today. I think for starters, I think like an overall vision is that the problem that we can have these days is that the internet and that social media and stuff tend to blow things out of proportion. Like the reality is, 100 years ago, there was a lot more murders and a lot more violence than there is today. But you didn't see it in full-length video on X, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you didn't see it halfway around the world. So like, you get some small thing that happens 3 states away, and you sit there and panic because things are going on. And I think that that's what's happening to a lot of the misinformation that's happening here with home pricing. So I have a lot of like visuals to go through. I guess I could discuss it a little bit, but if we need visuals and charts, I have a lot of it. As I said, I've done the research.
I don't know that I'm going to be on that long.
Okay.
I don't normally stream it all on Tuesdays. I did this as a favor tonight with Admiral Gibbs, because I'm going to be on tomorrow night debating as part of the debate panel, or discussing, however you want to. It's going to be a debate. It's just the way it works out. But
I'll give the high level.
Give the high level, and I'll work within it. Yeah.
Right. And what we could drill down detail later if necessary. The basic idea, and this is what I'm sitting here talking about multimedia, is this whole idea that wages aren't keeping up with productivity. And the reality is this is a myth. Like it's mathematically impossible for this to happen, because productivity and wages are pretty much intertwined in their definition. Like you can't have one without the other, and so you don't get it. What the truth is that's happening is that what we're seeing is that we're seeing a lot of wage inequality. So the poor people are getting poor and the rich people are getting rich.
I think there's a disconnect between what we consider like good wages and what people have come to think of as normal wages, right? And I tried to use this example today. Like my brother makes $28 an hour as a welder. He's a professional. That's pretty good in this area, right? Like you can afford to live on $28 an hour in this area. Now, are you going to have a 2-3 McMansion that's was built 5 years ago? No, you're not.
But you can't.
But there's an expectation reality that we've got, and what's happened is, and I blame the .com boom, right? Now, I understand that most people listening to this don't know what that is, and that's okay. But the dot-com boom made people who did absolutely nothing, contributed nothing to society, wealthy, right? Like, and it gave this idea that technology and being able to do something with a computer or writing out code or something like that, because they used to handwrite code. I know you guys don't believe me, but they did. Being able to do those things was worth more than a guy working on a roadway somewhere, right? And so we've got this that our idea of what work value is very skewed.
Yep.
And so now when reality's starting to swing back, right, and you're starting to see people that do coding and things like this, they're making $20 an hour, they're making $40, whatever it is. They're making a much lower pay level now than they probably ever have since the dot-com boom. And I think that's correct. And so and that's my wife there. I told you I was on borrowed. Give me 1 second. I'll mute down. You can chat.
Yeah, no, he brings up good points, and that is that was some things I was going to look at. Like the thing I like to always point out to is that if you price a home in gold or silver, the reality is that prices stayed the same since the 1900s. What's changed is that the value of our money has changed. And to Grid's point, what ends up happening is that the people who make tons of money tend to be the people that end up going towards where the major capital investment was, which is the dot-com boom. It's like there's a lot of capital invested in the dot-com boom, so people made high wages and a lot of money in there, and then all of a sudden that busts, and then the money goes elsewhere on the next big thing where people are spending tons of their money or whatnot.
Sure.
And that to me is an issue that we have with the whole idea that we have flexible currency, right? Like the removing of the gold standard. It's basically the government gets to print money, and therefore, for the most part, they get to dictate what industries the money goes towards.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting dynamic when we start talking about earning potential. And one of the most interesting things that I find this ridiculously interesting, right? So like there was one guy today that was like, pull up $100,000 house, I dare you. And he's like, oh, he won't do it. And I'm like, well, I can do it, but even if I do it, you're going to say, well, I don't live there. It doesn't mean anything to me, right? So there's no point in doing that exercise. I've done this before. I played this game many times. And so the reality is that the same houses I'm buying, right? Because I don't overpay. If I can buy a house for $215,000, anybody with a little bit of looking around and doing things can buy a house for $200,000. So to say that I can't, area. Yeah, so that you can't to say that, well, I can't buy anything under $400,000. To me, that's ridiculous, right? Now this changes with area, right? So if you're in Hayward, California, I used to own a house in Hayward, California. I paid $600,000 for it. I put $300,000 down for it. And I lived there. I mean, I kind of lived there, but that was ridiculous. That was insane. I honestly would, and it was cheaper to buy the house than to rent, to be honest with you. So
it should be. It should be in the long run, because the idea is that housing prices tend to increase, and therefore your rent's going to continually increase. Like I have friends that locked in mortgages 15 years ago, and they're paying $800 a month. And oh my gosh, that's insane. Well, yeah, because they bought it. And I get that. That's part of the complaint is that, before it was easy.
Right. But I was trying to make the point today that I didn't buy these things 20 years ago. I bought them this year, like
last year. Yeah.
Or last year. Some of them we bought. So in Columbus, Ohio, I personally bought a house there because it's a good investment. And then our investment fund has bought, I think we're at 20 houses right now, 20 properties. Right. Now, some of those we're selling, some of those we're renting. All of them will be sold at some point, right? But this isn't rocket science for me. And I didn't make money until I was until I was 35. I'm 55 now. I retired 10 years ago because I worked really, really hard to learn a skill, and then I was able to charge a lot for that skill. And then I had a house, and then I was able to do this, and then I was doing all of these other things. And so I think that my problem mostly with these kids is the unrealistic expectation of being able to go out, get married at 24, and buy a super nice house like their parents have.
Yeah.
First of all, it's insulting to your parents, right? Yeah. Like this is all they've accomplished in the world, and you want it day one. That's ridiculous. The second, and I didn't get into this point, is I think that most people spend a lot of money on stupid ass things. I did kind of get into it, but I didn't really get into it. When I was single, I did not rent an apartment by myself. I had roommates the whole time I was single. Right. Like it would mentally break me. I mean, it would mentally have just broken me down to have to pay $1,500 or whatever an apartment was at that point in time. There's no way I could mentally do it. And I watched employee after employee. Oh, here's my wife again. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll just continue off your point, and then the basic idea is, like, I have friends who basically they have a house. So that's an interesting point to be made, is that if you're a first-time home buyer, there are lots of programs out there to help you with the down payment to get you to the point where you can actually afford a house. And what my friends would do is that they would buy that and they'd rent it out for themselves and two of their friends. And basically that ends up getting their friends to pay the mortgage for them. So, I mean, these type of tricks are really good. Like, I have another friend that I have that lived in Indiana, and he worked, a Joe job. We're sitting there talking about, the job that was making $32 an hour. I forget exactly what it was. But he had that. And what he did, like what you did, is that he saved a lot of his money. He got like he saved up, like, this is over 10 years, right? To get to like $80,000 to $90,000. And then he's just started hitting home auctions. And he just started buying property on the cheap in Indiana off auctions. And now he's got 20, 30 properties. And this is a guy that started from little to nothing. And these opportunities still exist today. I mean, there's ways to go about doing these things to make it happen. And to your point, like, you don't get to go out and buy the $500,000 house from day one. You may have to look,
or even in the area you want, right? Like I was just talking to somebody earlier this year, and it was a young man. He has a good job. His wife has a great job. They're expecting a kid. They want to buy a house. Where they're at, they're in Texas. Where they're at, it's kind of expensive. And hey, Kissy Cat donated another $10. This is going to TTS, so we'll let that go.
Ad Farmer Cat donated $10. Super chat. Hey,
to me?
Yeah. All right, cool. So yeah, she did that. So this young man, asked a question about buying a house, and I told him, I'm like, you're going to have to, save your money, live as cheaply as you can, have the smallest apartment you can, don't fall into the trap of renting a larger place than you need just because you have some image. Yeah, some image quality that you need, like you need a 3-bedroom apartment, or some shit like that. Don't do that. And
I mean, to that point, like, there is no self-made millionaire that didn't live below their means.
Yeah,
like that's basically what the real trick is. And people are like, "Oh, I'm living below my means." Well, no, you're not. I mean, and I get it. Like, to Rob's point, it is difficult. Like, if you look at like the home price to income ratio over the years, we are at an all-time high, but it's not that much higher.
That's because the average is so skewed, because you have in my area, right? In my area, I can right now today. I actually just looked at a house. We put in an offer on it at $110,000. Now, it needs a lot of work. It's not, I wouldn't live there now because I don't have to. But if I were starting out, it would be somewhere where I would live and I'd fix it up as I went. And then 5 years from now, I'd sell it and I'd move into somewhere nicer. Right. I think that way. We have $100,000 or $80,000 houses. And then we have $8 million houses in the same zip code. Mm-hmm. And so that skews that whole, average home price is $750,000. No, it's not. It really isn't.
I know.
It really isn't.
There's a lot of number games. There's a lot of number games that are being played. Like you have median average, median income and median home price, which is different than like mode or average, like what normal other people would look at the average. And even like the median prices and the medium income, I think that tends to be the biggest trouble that we're running into. Like, things as that the median house price to income ratio has gone up, but it's not really that much higher than it was in 2005. Right. So, it's not like people haven't gone through that, but even that was a little bit higher and it has been lower throughout history. People talk about the 60s. So there is a little struggle there. And as we sat there and talked about, there's a little bit of struggle in the fact that wage disparity is going up. And, that somebody who is 25 or 30 and just getting started, they're going to have that lower paying job and it's not going to be keeping up with productivity type of thing. But that, is other things that you have to do.
That's an interesting thing to talk about as well. Like, so when I grew up, and I'm a great example of this because I was born in 71 and I did grow up doing, living the same life my parents had led, basically, very frugal. I grew up dirt poor. I mean, I had the power turned off sometimes. Like it was one of those things where, towards the end of the month, you come home and like, is the power going to be on the day? Is it not? Or have they turned it off? And it was, and so I grew up very poor. So I grew up very aware of money and who had money and who didn't. And is an interesting thing for me is that even the wealthier kids in my neighborhood and class and all of that, they saved money. They didn't buy new cars. There wasn't one kid in my I went to a military school, so that skews things down the road. But in my junior high, there wasn't a single kid that when they got their driver's license or got to high school got a brand new car. Not one kid. And most of them got like hand-me-down piece of crap car, unless their parents just happened to own a car lot or something. And but you look today and parents are going out and buying kids brand new cars and then that kid's saddled with payments, right? So you're starting up. The biggest thing is that we saddle ourselves with payments from an early age. There are kids right now, we were just going over this with my son, that have monthly like we're talking about 14-year-old kids have monthly game memberships to pay for. They're paying for their own cell phones. They don't want their, because their parents, they don't want their parents to know what they're doing on their cell phones. And they have and memberships to all these different things. And these are kids that don't even have a freaking job, bro.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. So by the time you actually get out into the world, it doesn't matter how much you make, 40% of it right out generically across the board. I have no figures to back this up, but the research that I've done in the spending habits lends me the belief that about 40% of what most people make from the time they're out of high school until the time they get married, about 40% of it goes straight out the door, goes into their bank account and straight out again in memberships, monthly clubs, and all of these other little fees that people pay. Their insurance is higher because they're stupid. They buy new cars, so they have a car payment. And most people don't even think nothing about a $500 to $1,000 a month car payment. And when I did not have a car payment until I was very, very late in life, very late, right?
Yeah,
I've avoided them like a freaking plague.
Right. It can be difficult to buy that stuff outright. so you don't have that car payment. But again, a lot of that's like living above your means or living
Right.
at your means.
Mhm.
You know, I drive around in a 95 Acura Integra. It's got
Flawless.
200,000 miles on it, or 205 or whatever.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, the thing costs me less than $100 a month, and that's
Yeah.
maintenance and gas and everything.
Yeah.
And so you just take that bill right out of your expenses, and it's like, ooh, it's not the latest greatest. Oh, it could be that. Yeah, don't care. I've had the fancy cars. It's not worth it.
Sure.
It's I'd rather save the money.
Yeah. So
Uh,
I mean, and I tried to use this example earlier today, but it's hard when I'm on somebody else's show to kind of like ramble on. But so when until even though I owned all of these cool cars in with the race team, and I made a bunch of money and all that kind of stuff, it wasn't until 5 years ago that I bought a newer vehicle. I was literally driving around and I had a 2004 Chevy Duramax Dually, which I paid $11,000 for cash money, and I kept it like 10 years. And then I had a GMC Envoy that I paid $1,000 for cash money, and I drove it until literally it got rod knock, and then I sold it for $1,300 and bought a Ford Expedition, a 2006 Ford Expedition, and that's what I drove. I didn't. My wife had a nice car because that was the, I mean, she's a girl, right? So my wife had a nice car. My wife had a nice car because she's a girl, and and I wanted my wife to have a very reliable, nice car. But I never needed that. I never cared about it. Right? I had a bunch of really cool stuff in the shop, but it's really bad when people, when I listen to these kids today and they're all black pilled about how, there's no hope for them. They're dead end jobs, dead end, and so they spend their money, and that was their excuse. I don't know if you caught it. I don't know if you were paying attention, but that was the excuse. Lewis and the other, I can't remember the other guy's name.
Chat.
What? Sorry?
It was in chat, right?
Yeah, it was in chat. It was Lewis and Mr. something or Dr. something, whatever. Anyway, their excuse, the thing is that they were like, so we're gonna have our fun, right? We're gonna have the Amazon, the weekly Amazon delivery. We're gonna have the video game, hundreds of dollars in video game memberships and all this other stuff, because we're never gonna have a house. We're never gonna, there's no point in saving. There's no point in doing it. It's like the most horrible black pill kind of nonsense I've ever heard, right? And it's a
it only feeds into it too. Like, so there's good points made about those things too. Is that one? I don't think people are taught financial literacy at all.
Well, they're taught very poor financial literacy.
Yeah. And two, and I'll agree with this, is that like modern day society tends to want to put a lot of pressures on people, to be cool or to be able to go out and do things. Like, you can blame a little bit of social media on this, where it's like, everybody's got to like dress to impress, or hey, look what I'm doing, and I'm doing all these cool things, and I think that can be problematic too. Is that, to me, that's consumerism, where it's like you're basically letting companies dictate how to run your life. And I think that's one of the biggest mistake people make, is that they don't want to run their lives themselves. They want to have somebody else do it because it's too hard. And that goes back to the education thing. Well, it's not really hard. You just have to learn how to do it properly. And I know this sounds like two old fogies talking about, when I was a kid, blah, 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 blah. But from the things that I've heard, like, when I get and talk to people, it's like they don't even seem to know some of the basic things. Like, okay, you can't afford a house, but how about putting some of your money in an index fund and earning off the stock market? Anybody can do this.
So Blair makes a great point here, and I want to add to this. So, and I'm going to give an example. So my son is 15, last year when he was 14, we started talking to him about college. He's a freshman in high school now, or then. So we're like, hey, you're out of middle school. Your grades actually count now towards your GPA. You can't mess around anymore. And, you got to start thinking about college, kid. What's up? What are you doing? And so he started talking about, and he thought about it, and a few weeks went by, and he starts talking about going into the Marines and being in the military and all of that. And so he was, and we were wondering why, right? We were like, and
military is great if you've taught them well. So I've seen the military goes into two types. One type, which is what my brother did, is that he had made all this money. Like, again, in the military, everything is pretty much paid for, and yet you still get paid, and it's tax free. So people, like my brother, would blow it off on fancy car. He'd buy a new car every 6 months. He'd go out to the bar and drink all the time. He'd party. And it's like, but you got other people, it's like stash all that money that the government's giving you and let the government pay for everything else and let you survive. And then you walk away from your army and you have that down payment for a house.
Right. So, so my son was like, so he was talking about going into the military and all this kind of stuff. And my wife's like, why is he talking about this all of a sudden? And I'm like, hey, we'll just ask him. So I asked him one day, I was taking him to school, and I'm like, hey man, what's up with the military stuff all the time? That's kind of new. What's up with that? He's like, well, I got to go to college. Mom said I had to go to college. I'm like, yeah, that's true. You're going to go to college. He's like, well, I don't want to be a burden to you guys. So my kids actually don't know how wealthy we really are.
Right? Yeah, keeping the secret.
And, they know we're do okay, but they're not like, they're very humble.
About the 20 houses. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to find out sooner or later.
Yeah. No, he understands it all. I mean, and all of it's, there for them. So, but the interesting thing is that when it really struck me I think there's this lost generation of the guys like that were in Rob's chat today. And then you have this newer generation that's more hardcore. They're probably more hard. They might even be more hardcore than I, as a Gen X kid, am. My son literally, like, he knows exactly how much money he has. He understands what money is. He understands how to spend it, how to save it. And it was really grown up of him to say, well, I don't want to be a burden to you and mom. And well, you're not going to be a burden to us. And so he's like, yeah, but whatever. So then he was like, so I'm like, well, make a different plan, because military may not be for you. So then he'd gone to Oshkosh with me to the air show there. And, he's like, well, you know what? I'll be an airline pilot. I can do that. I can sign up 2-year commitment with a regional airline, and they'll teach me. I'll get my pilot's license and my commercial license and my ATP all at the same time, and then I can go drive a bus in the sky for a little while. I'll make a lot of money, and then I can go to college and I'll pay for it myself. So he that's really how he thought about it. Like, he wasn't like. He wasn't like, I'm just going to have you guys pay for it, or I'm going to get some miracle scholarship that, he probably will, but that's beside the point. But so now he is dead set on going to West Point, because if he goes to West Point, not only is college free, he gets paid every month to go to school there. Mm-hmm. And he's literally like, I'm going to do this. So it's really interesting. The dynamic, because so I've given it's like, I told my son he wanted a motorcycle, and I'm like, you're gonna have to buy it yourself. There's no way mom's gonna let me buy you a motorcycle. That's just not gonna happen. And so he actually set it up. So he had in his he has a debit card or a credit card, and he set it up so that when his allowance is deposited, it splits it off. And he has money sitting there that's, when he gets enough, he'll go buy a motorcycle. I mean, and that's his money. So I think that there is a difference in the way that the last couple of generations have been taught about money and how, and even now when you watch Red Pill content and these guys talking about how to make money and do all this stuff, it's crazy how they talk or how they talk about how you're going to make money in life, and then what you spend it on, right? Which is even crazier. So, I understand that I do sound like an old codger, but I'm really not. Like I really would rather people make more money. I would rather, I want people to do well. I want people to learn the value of having a great life. But sometimes a great life isn't, a McMansion in a sea of McMansions like everybody else has. Sometimes it's a 2-bedroom cabin on 5 acres in the middle of fucking nowhere and a 30 or 40-minute drive to work.
Yep.
Right.
And I think that you also have a lot to offer too, because again, the whole old fogey codger speaking, it's like a lot of this is like, oh no, this is our experience and we want to help dish it out. And I think that you have a lot of that to give. Like, I mean, you've seen successful routes. It's the reality is that this kind of problem has existed through most of society. And an old adage is that money doesn't last through 3 generations. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's difficult because I'm like, you haven't fallen into this trap, but a lot of like, oh, I worked really hard. I don't want to see my children suffer the same. And the problem with that point is it misses the boat. It's like, well, then you don't teach them how you got there in the first place. And they end up taking all your, they end up spending all your money. I mean,
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is that, and I don't know any parents that fall into this trap that are in my age bracket, but I know some younger ones that do. And that is that they are not planning for their kids' future. They're planning for their future.
Yeah.
So whereas my parents didn't have any money, so it didn't matter. But other kids in my day, they didn't get massive weddings. They didn't get like $50,000 weddings and stupid shit like that. They got a church and a convention hall that was like $500, and they got married, and then their parents maybe gave them $10,000 or $20,000 that they had squirreled away over the years to put down on a house, or get them set up in life, maybe go put some money into a business or something like that. And as a matter of fact, when I got married, when my wife and I got married, we had some money set aside, but her parents actually gave us a few dollars to help buy our first house together. And we didn't need it, but certainly it helped everything. And I think my entire wedding probably cost under $5,000, all of it.
Yep. I know a couple of them, when they got married, again, it was one of those, rent out the local area type thing. They put a bunch of the cameras, like the little throwaway cameras on all the tables, so they didn't have to hire a photographer.
Well, we didn't hire a photographer at all. There was one of my wife's girlfriend's friends was this dude that was like a photography buff, and he came out and he had all the cameras and he had everything, and he just wanted to show off for the girls, and we didn't pay. I think we paid him like $50 or something to come out and gave him some food. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Why are you spending $3,000 on a photographer, bro? Like, that's dumb. Yeah. Like, don't do that. That's not smart at all. So I do think that there's like I said, a bunch of lifestyle choices that are very questionable. And especially with parents that are slightly younger than me, it's just like they're really not doing anything for their kids. And I've literally had people I know that are probably 10, 15 years younger than me, and they're like, yeah, there's not going to be anything left for my kids. I plan on, I've literally had, I remember this one guy was telling me, he's like, yeah, we were actually talking about his retirement fund. He's like, yeah, my retirement fund's like my permanent vacation. He's like, yeah, the wife and I are going to go, to some, I forget what country, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And, if there's any money left, we're going to do this. And I'm like, that's insane. What about your kids? What are you doing? Oh, they'll be fine. We put them through college. We did all that, so
Oh, well, there you go.
Crazy. It's crazy, man. Like,
yeah. As I said, I think people can, there's a lot of lessons to be learned on how to do these things. And like you're saying, I'm glad to see that a new generation is at least asking the question or trying to figure it out for themselves versus just going black pilled and go, oh, it can't happen. Yes, the numbers can show that it's not the optimum time in history to be a 25-year-old trying to buy a house, but that
in New
doesn't
York
mean
City,
it's not,
for sure.
yeah, in New York City. Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. There's a lot of other
so
things.
We just bought 2 years ago now. We bought an apartment in New Jersey, basically on the river, right across from Manhattan, $500,000, 2-bedroom apartment. And tell me, look, you guys can come at me all day long just because nobody wants to do the homework. Nobody wants to make the hard choices, or did we want to be in Manhattan? No, actually we didn't. We moved out of Manhattan, but did we want to be maybe on a higher floor? Maybe no, probably not. I don't know. I like our apartment, but and now we rent now that we're not even in my wife doesn't have to go to Manhattan that much. I don't like to go to New York at all, so we're renting that out. That's making us a couple $100. It makes us a couple $100 a month, but we're not even paying the payment for that, right? Like this is I think a lot of it comes down to people just don't make good choices, and people don't have an understanding of basic and not even financial knowledge, but just how to live your life within your means and what that truly conveys. So
yep, I'm with you. I guess we'll end it the idea is just learning how it's best to make things happen. This isn't unique in history that people haven't been able to do it. People still figure it out, and that's really what it takes. Is it's you're responsible for your own life. You got to figure it out, and you've got to do what works. There was when I was growing up, you couldn't go one night with an infomercial and people this is how you make money buying houses, zero money down. I'm sure you remember all those ads. We don't actually see that kind of stuff anymore that I know of. Trump University was all about how to buy homes and real estate. And I get it's frustrating. As I said, it's it feels like, hey, you should be able to teach these people how to do these things and stand up for themselves. And I'm glad to see that the younger generation is, instead of just going all black pill about it, that they're actually, okay, so how does this work now? How can we make this happen?
Yeah. I think there's a very vocal group of people between about 25 and 35 that have had it. They've had it rough, right? They were lied to by their parents, or lied to by video, or film, or whatever you want to call it, media. They were lied to by media. They were lied to by their schools, or lied to by college. Everybody literally lied to these fuckers. And now they're running around like it's woe is me, right? And of course, I have little sympathy for them because you're grown ass men and women. Figure it out. Get your shit together.
Yeah, and find people that are willing to help. As I said, there's tons of people that are willing to offer advice and pass down. This is what I said, and like Grid will point out, he wasn't rich overnight. It took time, it took effort, and I don't think that's what people want to hear the stories. Of. I know somebody who got a government contract for 50 million and shared it with his brother, and they get 50% of the. So this guy's instantaneously got $12.5 million overnight just because of a government contract, and everybody thinks they're going to win that lottery, and that's not how most rich people became rich, believe it or not.
Well, I think that I think that I never actually won the lottery. You know, so I had to build everything I had. I never bought anything. Like when so I the I left.
Yep.
Whoop. Sorry about that. It does that sometimes. I left a really decent paying job because my goal when I got hired at that job, I literally told them, I'm like, look, in between 3 to 5 years, I'm going to open my own shop. I said, I'm literally coming here to work for you so I can learn to do what you do. And he was like, yeah, you should totally do that. The guy I went to work for. And I went there and I already had the skills down, but I needed to learn how to run a business. Where I had been, they were very excellent at their workmanship and quality and skills. But the guy who owned the business was just terrible at running it. So I ended up bouncing around to some race teams and doing a bunch of mercenary work. And finally, I'm like, I just want to open my own shop. I want to do it myself. And so I went to work for a company in Colorado called 3R. And, I told the guy, I went out there for a job interview. I was there for a week. I worked in the shop for free. We got to know each other before they hired me. And I flat told him, I said, I won't be here in 5 years. Like my entire purpose is to come learn how you do what you do and how you're successful so that I can go be successful doing it. And so in 3 years, I had been there long enough. I'd seen what I needed to see. I'd learned what I needed to learn. And he and I quit. And actually, I really give Bob a lot of credit because he did not need at all to give me my severance or anything like that. He was perfectly within his rights with the way that I left to not pay me a dime, to let me just walk out the door. But he gave me my full severance. He gave me everything. I walked out the door with more money than I had expected to walk out with. And I went out and I did some part-time work at somewhere else. And then ended up going all in on my own business. And I never looked back from doing that. And it was a lot of risk. There were a lot of nights where I was in the shop very late. There was a lot of, it was a lot. And for 2 years, I didn't race because out of respect for Bob, my former employer, I did not do any race car work for the first 2 years. I considered it, just kind of there's a term for it in
non-compete clause.
Yeah, it's kind of a non-compete clause, but there's a term for it in the financial world. I'm not going to it's meaningless, but I took that time and I concentrated just on building a tuning shop, and I built that up, and then I opened a race shop, and then I bought a body shop, and then from there I built my little empire from that one decision. And the number of people that are willing to do that period is really small. But the thing is that if you can't do it, then you need to just confess to yourself that you're going to work for somebody your whole life, and you need to do the best damn job at that you can.
And that's not altogether like you don't necessarily have to own a business in order to do things. Like there's a lot of tricks that you can do where you still work for other people, but you can advantage. Like we could talk again. There's a lot to dissect and go into if people want to learn and understand. Like the idea is setting up your own LLC. And basically, instead of being, an employee of a company, being a contractor of a company and putting everything on your LLC, and you get lots of good tax benefits for that and save a lot of money doing so. So even if you want to work for somebody for the rest of your life, there are ways to set these things up where you can still do things financially smart and, be able to provide and make things out for, better for yourselves without. But, to your point, like look at Rob Knorr. Like, look at what it took for him to drop his Joe job and actually take a chance and risk everything at life. It's difficult, it's scary, it's hard to do, and he doesn't know where it's going to go, but that's part of the issue with it. Like,
Sure.
people complain about, oh, well, these business owners take all the money, and it's just like, yeah, well, they're assuming all the risk too. Like, their lives can be destroyed if things don't work well for them, and
Yeah,
that's something I don't think is appreciated.
yeah, I'm gonna say a couple more things, and I'm gonna have to run. But one
Yeah.
thing is that I actually never had employees really get mad at me about their salaries. I paid them well. They knew that I made money, but they also knew that not only was I taking all the risks, even if we had a bad week, they still got paid. I didn't get paid. And so when you're when people sit there and say stupid things like that, I'm the first one to say you're a really bad employee, right? You should go own your own business, because I'm unemployable, right? Like, I cannot work for other people anymore, right? Like, I'm going to do it my way. I actually but the reason well, you don't know this, but I had a meeting today with a company that I'm about to buy. And I talked to the guy who runs the company now, who's going to stay on, and he's going to run this business for me. We're going to give him a salary. We're expecting a 2-year commitment from him before, and then a non-compete after that. And I think I ironed out all the details today, and I think all we got to do now is do due diligence and make sure all the financials are right and get the financing in order for the property, and we'll just cut them a check and buy the business. And the important part of this is that I'm assuming all of the risk, right? Like,
Yep,
he could walk out the door. Right. Like, he could walk and he knows that. I told him, I'm like, the worst thing would be, for you to turn around and stab us in the back on this deal, because not that I can't run it, but I have other things that I need to do besides run this business. It's not a deal if I'm going to have to come run this business myself. And it's it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for it's not for people that are employees. So,
yep.
And
Okay.
then the last thing is that I think that in my day-to-day life, I meet more people who are either great employees or great entrepreneurs or managers. I meet more people like that than I meet these black-pilled, the world's ending, I can't find a girl to date, I can't do this, I can't do that, there's no good women left, there's no good jobs left, everything sucks, my life sucks. I meet way more people who are having a great life than I do that are sick of life, or think that life is against them. And I think that and that's one of the reasons why I fight back against those people so hard, right? Like, there's just no, to me, there's nothing there. I don't care what amount of information that they want to hide behind. The reality is the reality, and the fact that people are today buying homes, people are today building businesses, people are today having, retiring from jobs they've had for 20 or 30 years. The fact that all of that happens means that none of their bullshit has any bearing on reality.
Yeah, that's why I started this whole conversation out with the social media thing. It's like we sit there and get all this information coming from everywhere. And as humans, I don't think we've learned how to figure out how to properly process and dissect that. And humans tend to fear the unknown. We try to avoid punishment much more strongly than we like reward. And maybe I can unpack that if it needs to be. But the point being is that when people hear these news bubbles and see these things that tend to be political, that tend to be not true, they freak out and go black. And that's the thing. Those are the things that I try to go after, and I try to like, no, this whole income is not keeping up with productivity. It's complete bullshit. And I've proved it multiple times in multiple ways on how to do it. But that the reality is that even if it was true, that doesn't mean anything to you as an individual. You still have to live in that environment the best way you can.
Yeah.
And you need to figure it out. There are people out there, like you're saying, doing all these things and living good lives. And so you can either sit there and mope and continue to believe the bullshit, or you can figure out how to make it work and live a good life.
Like my man John Mosman here. Welcome, by the way, John Mosman. I was not able to greet you properly when you came in. He says, just got my first home. God blessed with this. I will never be black-pilled, but joy-pilled. You know what? Again, he's in his 30s.
Yep.
Married. He's a good dude. Mosman and I may not agree on everything, but he is a good dude. And you're 44. He's 44. First home at 44. Didn't give up. Didn't get black. So, yeah.
And as I said, like I guess we could try to see if we can post research and whatnot to be a first-time home buyer. There are so many programs out there that help get you there.
Sure.
And I'm amazed at people that say, like, okay, I get it. It's like you might need $10,000 to $15,000, and to a lot of people, it's like, oh my God, that's a lot. But it's like, is it really? You can't save that over a year or two.
So I had a friend of mine, and he was in the same situation. He's like, well, I need $10,000 for a down payment. He had had all of these things that he had accumulated through the years, right? Like he had a motorcycle, he had he had an extra car, he had some other stuff. And so he sold everything, and he just got it down to the point where he got and then he saved every dime, and he worked a few extra shifts in here and there. And of course it was easy work for his dad, but that was beside the point. But he worked some extra shifts. He got and he got his $10,000 together, and he went and he bought a house.
Yep.
And then, then he got a bunch of roommates, and he ended up making, he was coming out $500 a head every month. After the mortgage and all the bills were paid, he had $500. So he saved that money up. And when he got another 5 or 10 grand or whatever it was together, he went out and bought another house.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, I think the real problem is that people aren't taught how to properly buy a house and how to do things right. And while it's easy to find programs like that, it's hard to trust what you find because there's so many bad ones. And so you have to really, it is an unfortunate thing. I am going to have to get off, guys. My wife's called me twice, which is a bad sign. Once is not good, but twice is just almost terrible. I'm trying to find somewhere to send everybody. Who's live, guys?
Rob is, but
Rob's live. Rob Noor,
mm-hmm.
The man himself. Well, let's see if I can't send you guys to Rob Noor. Rob Noor is
or Emmett.
Guy.
Both talking. Yeah. If you got that third phone call, I was clicking the leave button.
Yeah. That was a good plan. That was a good plan. Not that my wife actually gets upset with me, but there's no point in risking, having issues. What's interesting is I think that a lot of people, for whatever reason, they think that people don't, that there is such a thing as a perfect relationship or whatever. And there certainly is not. My wife and I really don't fight. But when we do have a disagreement, it can be, we're both very strong-minded people. Guys, I'm going to send you over to the man himself, Rob Noor, who is live right now. He's got Emmett on, which is awesome. And you guys go have a great time. I'm going to get out of here. I really appreciate the grift tonight. I didn't do as well as I wanted to, but that's okay. Before heading out, guys, please hit that like. Come back and make a comment. Comment how you think I did as a judge tonight. If I was right, wrong, or indifferent. And you guys all be cool and wear glasses if you need them. And go stand on Rob Knorr's